The infamous Rakanessus. The infamous Rakanessus. Days later. Taka and Jiro sat together at a table during lunch period, chatting casually as they ate from their lunch boxes. So, have you studied for UA's written exam? She asked, looking up from her food. I'm not feeling very confident, to be honest. It's the top school in Japan, you know. No matter how much you study, they always find you lacking at something. Taka didn't react much. He merely looked up from his food for a moment before continuing to eat normally as he answered. I'm studying, but in case things don't work out, I'll just score the top spot in the practical exam. That way, even if I screw up on the written one, they won't be able to refuse me. You're seriously declaring you'll take the top spot? Jiro pointed her chopsticks at him, her eyes skeptical. I mean, your quirk seems strong, but come on, it's UA, there's bound to be people with all sorts of crazy quirks. How can you be so sure you can outshine them? Taka let out a calm huff, eyes closed, unfazed by Jiro's words. Just because All Might graduated from there doesn't mean everyone's at his level. He popped a bite of food into his mouth, chewed, then grew a little more serious. And even if there are strong people there, I'll just be stronger. That's some hell of a confidence. Jiro gave a wry laugh, idly rubbing one of her earlobes. I have my quirk in high regard, but even I'm not that confident in getting in. You overestimate them too much, Taka snorted. Then his tone softened. But if you're that worried, just prepare the best you can. How? Training, obviously. Jiro winced, looking at Taka oddly. Using our quirks in public is illegal, you know. Taka raised an eyebrow. Number one would see if you practiced at home. Still feels a bit illegal. She mumbled under her breath. He huffed, annoyance slipping into his tone. Well, either prepare and face the exam knowing you gave it your all, or accept whatever result you get, knowing you could have done more. Jiro froze, chopsticks hovering halfway to her mouth. Moments later, she pulled them back and seemed to think Taka's words over. But just as the silence stretched, another of Taka's comments came, but I don't know what you're really fussing about. Your quirk's solid. It'd be strange if you failed. Even more so when you passed in the original show. He thought inwardly. Really? Well, if you say so, she muttered, sheepish from the sudden vote of confidence. Luckily, before things turned awkward, at least for Jiro, a group of girls approached. Jiro-chan, there you are. We were waiting to have lunch together. This is. One of them squinted at Taka suspiciously. I think I've seen him around. Same year but different class. Could it be? Jiro-chan, you've got a. Slam. Jiro shot up, slamming her hands on the table, face faintly tinged red with frustration and embarrassment. He's a friend I made recently. The girls blinked at her outburst, then turned to glare at Taka. He just blinked back at them calmly and kept eating. Suspicion lingered in them. Why so suddenly? I don't think I've ever seen Jiro-chan hanging with anyone from the other classes. The girl in front smirked, glancing between the two of them. Jiro's voice shot defensive. That's cause this guy's going to UA too. Come on, Takahashi, say something. Hey. Say something more than, hey. What's up? This guy. Jiro groaned. Meanwhile, the girls exchanged confused looks. You're going to UA. The hero course. Taka nodded. Cool. Someone who's actually aiming for UA. I thought Jiro-chan would be the only one at our school. What's your quirk? Just so you know, Jiro-chan's quirk is amazing. She might give you a hard time if you face each other. Jiro rubbed the side of her cheek, mumbling, it's not that amazing. Instead of answering, Taka let go of his chopsticks midway through his mouth. Normally, they would have fallen and sent the food stuck between them flying everywhere. But to everyone's surprise, they remained stuck in place, as if frozen in time, floating in the air. Then, to top it off, they began feeding Taka off his bento, as if they had a life of their own. Earning gasps from everyone save Jiro, who simply smiled faintly. Telekinesis. One girl asked. Taka nodded. How strong is it? Can you lift me in the air? Taka nodded. That's an amazing quirk. Taka nodded. That's like Rakanessus power. Taka was about to nod again, but blinked in confusion as a stranger's name popped up. Who? Jiro's smiling face turned shocked as her head snapped at him. You don't know him. Taka shook his head, tilting it faintly. Quickly, she pulled out her phone, scrolled, then shoved the screen in his face. His eyes twitched faintly at what he saw. So what if you can see the dark inside of me? It was him, playing his new song at the incident a few days ago. However, already a master of his act, he managed to keep his poker face despite the little eye twitch. A singer? He asked, acting clueless. So you really don't know? Jiro said, taking her phone back. He's a vigilante who's been hitting it lately online. He raids hero and villain fights just to play his songs. Taka stayed silent with his usual poker face, as if prompting Jiro to continue explaining. She did, eagerly at that. Well, I suppose it's not that crazy you don't know him. He wasn't that well known until a few days ago, when he actually took down a villain, then proceeded to defeat a team of heroes and run away from an entire batch of police officers as they tried to arrest him. Yeah, it was all over the news. One of the girls commented, sounding almost offended. Taka averted his gaze, looking a bit disinterested. I don't usually watch the news. However, he was forced to look back when Jiro shoved her phone in his face again. This time, she showed the news footage of him flying away from dozens of vehicles, along with sporadic short clips of him handling the three heroes, like slamming Pidgale into the ground, flicking hand breakable, or leaving Plasma Pop stranded in a building once he crushed the helicopter's propellers. Taka had to suppress his smirk as he saw himself on screen, beating down the heroes with ease. Damn, I'm cool. While Taka struggled to hide the arrogance bubbling up in his chest, Jiro went on with her explanation. He's been shown lifting all his instruments without touching them, and stopping attacks midway from afar, so it's been speculated he has a telekinesis quirk like you do, hence the nickname Rockinesis, since he also plays rock songs at his shows. Taka nodded. It's not a bad name, I think. Honestly, for a moment I thought your quirk was kind of similar, since both are literally lifting things from afar, Jiro suddenly said, chuckling wryly. But after the incident he was involved in days ago, it became clear his quirk is not quite telekinesis. Oh, yeah, I know what you mean. It was crazy. One of the girls chimed in. I felt my mouth drop when I saw it live. Another said, looking excited as she recalled it. Taka was a tad confused. He'd been worried they would figure out his identity as Rockinesis for a moment, but it turns out they had already discarded him as a candidate. Why though? Fortunately, Jiro was quick to explain. You see, during the last part of the pursuit, Rockinesis ended up being confronted by a pretty strong hero, Super Monkey, you know him. Taka did his best to hide his sour expression. Yes. Jiro nodded, continuing. That guy, even though his costume is ridiculous and he stupidly seeks to rank 69th in the hero rankings on purpose when he could very easily rank higher, he's quite strong. Even Rockinesis ended up being thrashed once he clashed with that guy, despite having dealt with 3 heroes himself earlier. I wouldn't say thrashed. Taka complained inwardly. But then, just as it seemed they were about to arrest him for good, he goes and disappears. Just like that, no explanation, no warning, he suddenly began vanishing, as if he was ceasing to exist. He died? Taka asked, feigning confusion. No, that's the thing. His channel uploaded a recording of him doing his show not too many hours after he seemingly vanished, so he's hardly dead. Thanks to that, there's talk online that says he has a cloning quirk, or something with similar properties. Some speculate that's why his flight speed suddenly slowed down so much after entering a parking lot during the pursuit and disappearing for a few minutes. Because he'd been a clone, one with a fraction of the power of the original, who calmly slipped away as the police chased after a decoy. Jiro finally finished explaining, looking exhausted but otherwise a bit too excited. You sure know a lot, huh? Taka commented, a bit speechless. The group of girls giggled in response to his comment. Jiro-chan is quite the fangirl of that guy. She's been pestering us about him from day one, when he made his appearance. Yeah, she's the one who keeps us up to date with whatever crazy thing that guy has done. Shut up, all of you. I'm not a fangirl, he's just, he's like a rock star while also being a hero at the same time. He's practically the vivid image of what I'd like to do with my life. He's a vigilante, One of them said. She snapped her head toward her, looking frustrated. Yeah, but he hasn't injured anyone, and even during the fight a few days ago, he made sure not to hurt the heroes too badly, even though one of them almost destroyed a whole apartment just because she lost her cool. The group of girls looked at each other before sneering and pointing at Jiro with their thumbs. Like we said, fangirl. Taka just ate silently, giving Jiro a pitiful gaze. Oi, what's with that look? It's fine, everyone has their likes and dislikes. I don't judge. Takahashi, you. Degree. Minutes later. Having finished their lunch, Taka parted ways with Jiro as she went off with her classmates. He, on the other hand, was casually walking through the hall, passing by countless students without any clear aim. His focus was elsewhere. Rockinesis, huh. Maybe I should change the name of my channel to that. After all, the mysterious guitarist was a bit boring. If he wanted a clear identity that made him more recognizable, and thus let him gain aura more easily, then Rockinesis didn't sound too bad. Just a bit dumb. Or was it very dumb? Rockinesis. Rukinesis. Rockineses. Rockins is. Alright, it lost all meaning now. Rolling his eyes, Taka opened his status. Status page. Filled right pointing small triangle strength, 83. Filled right pointing small triangle defense, 166. Filled right pointing small triangle aura projection, 1897. Total aura, 1897. Skills. Filled right pointing small triangle clean. Filled right pointing small triangle trouble radar. Filled right pointing small triangle connoisseur. Filled right pointing small triangle pain is just a feeling. Filled right pointing small triangle inimmovable object. Filled right pointing small triangle true speaking. Filled right pointing small triangle true breathing. Filled right pointing small triangle true walking. Filled right pointing small triangle good job beating me, but that was merely a clone. About 100.5 aura gained in just 3 days, both from passive gains and a few incidents. He caressed his chin, looking at the number with satisfied eyes. His passive gains had spiked again, jumping from the 10 per day they had been a month ago to around 25 per day. That meant 5,000 aura by the time UA started in 7 and something months. And it was no wonder. The clip from his concert a few days ago had already reached 100k views, and it had only been 3 days. Albeit, obviously, the views would decline as the days passed, but even then, it was a surprising feat. But would it really decline? Right now, he had enough infamy that anything he did would get the media's attention. If he stayed consistent and kept getting involved in things, public awareness wouldn't just hold steady, it might grow even bigger. Maybe using clones was a good idea too. If he sent them to handle things, not only would he avoid getting tangled or linked to vigilante activity, he'd also maintain a proper level of consistency by not having to overexert himself. The only problem was the weird feeling that hit once the clones dispersed. He didn't like it, but if it meant farming more aura, he supposed he could deal with it for a while. 7 months, 5,000 aura promised just from passive gains, and even more if his fame grew. Well, seems like I've got work to do ahead. Taka smiled helplessly, already picturing the months ahead filled with countless villain battles, police chases, and concerts in the middle of the street. But when the moment came to crush everyone at UA and finally step into the big game, it would all be worth it. Taka smirked. Less than +5 aura. Greater than. His smile widened a little as another batch of passive earnings came knocking. His smile froze, however, when the system chimed in again. Your aura has reached the 1900s. Good work, it must have been one hell of a road. However, you must know by now, the path of the aura farmer never ends, and even bigger numbers are awaiting you. For that, it's important to template the body properly to be able to handle it, and for that, being able to make the most efficient use of the energy your body intakes is fundamental. Conditions for completion. Filled right pointing small triangle consume at least 4,000 kilocalories each day, for an entire week. Filled right pointing small triangle drink at least 3 liters of water a day for an entire week. Filled right pointing small triangle run at least 1 hour straight daily, for an entire week, and without augmenting your physique using aura. Reward. +350 aura, skill gained, efficient body. Taka blinked perplexedly as he read the conditions of the mission. The fuck is this? ... To be continued. And so, another mission pops up. Like I said earlier, most skills won't be focused straight on amping Taka's power, but on giving different effects and helping with the aura farming. All sorts of miscellaneous skills are ahead. Time skip. 3 months later. Pipe. Comma. Again. A middle-aged man muttered, raising an eyebrow at the newspaper in his hands. His baffled expression only deepened as he scanned the lines of text. What's up? Another man asked, seated beside him on the same bench, feeding the pigeons. It says here that the Rockinesis guy got away again. Too bad for you guys, I'm sticking with the name because I'm evil. Again. How many times has it been now? 6 or 7 since the first time. Honestly, I don't even get why they bother, it's always just a clone they catch. The real one's probably still out there, laughing his ass off. At this point, the police are simply making a joke of themselves. And it's not like the punk's doing anything that bad, is he? Sure, he's beaten a few heroes, but it always looks like self-defense. True. And besides, he's finally putting our city on the map along with Tokyo. Honestly, besides that weird guy Super Monkey, none of our heroes stand out, which is pretty sad. Why the hell did that clown have to be the strongest hero in our city? He's kind of funny though. Yeah, I suppose he is. At least he's not some weirdo like Midnight. If he started perverting our kids, that'd be the last straw. Didn't he just get caught in a scandal last month, though? They say someone spotted him kissing another heroine in an alleyway. Forget it. Both men sighed in unison. At the same time, a youth jogged past them, sparing only a quick glance before a small smile curved his otherwise calm face. Clad in a black tracksuit and white sneakers, his figure stood out against the greenery of the park. Black hair swayed with his steady rhythm, a bead of sweat rolling down his forehead, though his breathing remained smooth, showing how far he still was from real exhaustion. He continued jogging along the park, and as he passed by other people, he couldn't help but overhear snippets of conversations. Yo, what are you listening to? Animal I have become. Rockinesis uploaded an official video on his channel a while back. What? When? Damn it, what's wrong with my algorithm? The youth's smile deepened. Yo, I heard there's a villain getting jumped a few streets away. That's sick. Think Rockinesis will show up? Hell yeah. Let's go then. His smile widened further. Mommy, do you know who Rockinesis is? I don't know, but with that kind name, it's probably nobody important. Okay. This time, the youth's smile faltered, just a little. But the slip hardly mattered. The smirk that was already spread across his face was impossible to wipe away just from that little setback. So this is what it feels like to be a celebrity, huh? Not bad. He sneered, shaking his head helplessly. It seems I, Takahashi, have become someone of renown. Indeed, although you might not believe it, and as incredible as it might be, that youth was none other than Taka, now taller, leaner, and more fit than before. The past few months had been wild. For starters, one of the missions he had gotten months ago had made him go through quite a hectic week. Eating like never before, drinking like never before, and running for an entire hour at full speed. To say he almost puked a few times would be an understatement. The feeling of bloating also wasn't nice. The running part was also hard in its own right. Sure, it was hard for him to run out of breath nowadays thanks to his true breathing skill, but things like friction still affected him, so by the time he was done running, he was always sweating like crazy. But after going through it for the entire week, Taka finally unlocked the skill, efficient body, a passive that let him eat as much as he wanted without gaining fat or suffering from health issues. Basically, he could binge mukbangs and be fine. It was actually a bit more complicated than that, but that was the gist of it, and what mattered the most to him. Although he had struggled at first, by the end of the week, his body had somewhat acclimated, so it was only bad for the first half. Unfortunately, that mission had only been a prelude for what his system had in store. As soon as efficient body unlocked, a new section appeared, the daily quests. It tasked him with training his body for a few minutes each day in exchange for a little aura. It varied depending on how much he exerted his body, but usually it was not much. Usually only 5 points. Still, like any kind of aura gained daily, it was a nice addition to his passive earnings, which meant more aura by the time UA started. So he happily did them. This jumped his passive earnings from the 25 aura gained per day 3 months ago, to a whopping 35. During the 3 months, he'd also been pushing his cloning ability to the max. Sometimes, he sent clones infused with chunks of aura to farm more outside, putting them to do his usual shows while he himself stayed home, safe from trouble. At other times, he had them practice with other instruments, steadily working toward his mission of creating his own song. He couldn't just let it be a guitar solo, after all. The connoisseur skill also sped up the progress a lot. Thanks to that, everything was as smooth and efficient as he could have wished. The clones were a great way to multitask, since as soon as they dispersed, their memories came back to him. Of course, if he had properly spammed his cloning ability, he probably would have been done with that already. But as convenient as it was, that memory perk, receiving all the memories of a clone, and sometimes from multiple clones crashing into his mind at the same time, was overwhelming. It left him feeling weird and kind of split for a bit, as if his mind tried to understand which of the memories had been the real ones. And having otherworldly memories also occupying part of his mind also didn't help. So, he avoided using it recklessly, sticking to when it was worth the annoyance. Hence, for farming aura, and practicing every now and then. Though there was one time he tried using it just to skip school, only to realize that without anything to actually do while his clones handled class, he felt like a complete bum. And he didn't enjoy being a bum. So, in the end, he decided it was better to go himself. Leaving all the heavy lifting to the clones was nice, but feeling useless wasn't. Plus, having his friends talk to a clone instead of him felt kind of cheap. Friends, as in Jiro alone. The path of an aura farmer is a lonely one. He shook his head helplessly. Less than stop making excuses for your lack of friends, host. Greater than. Single quote dot 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 single quote. And so, that's how the 3 months had passed. The song was nearly complete. His aura had skyrocketed compared to before. He had gotten a new skill and a new section of daily quests. Truly a productive time skip. Smirking, Taka opened up his system panel to admire his growth. Status page. Filled right pointing small triangle strength, 118. Filled right pointing small triangle defense, 236. Filled right pointing small triangle aura projection, 5221. Total aura, 5221. Skills. Filled right pointing small triangle clean. Filled right pointing small triangle trouble radar. Filled right pointing small triangle connoisseur. Filled right pointing small triangle pain is just a feeling. Filled right pointing small triangle immovable object. Filled right pointing small triangle true speaking. Filled right pointing small triangle true breathing. Filled right pointing small triangle true walking. Filled right pointing small triangle good job beating me, but that was merely a clone. Filled right pointing small triangle efficient body. Aura up by nearly 3,300 in just 3 months. It felt pretty good to look at what his efforts, and those of his clones, had yielded. Most of that had come from passive earnings, a bit from the daily quests, and the rest from his concerts and other aura farming stuff he did every now and then. And his physical stats weren't bad either. With all the training he'd done, both his own and Seiji's usual torture sessions, he'd finally broken past the 100-point mark on his strength, and the 200 mark on his defense. He was basically twice as strong as he'd been when the system first arrived. It wasn't much compared to what he could reach by pumping aura directly into his body, but it felt satisfying to have reached that point by mere effort alone. All in all, his growth had been great. And at this pace, by the time UA started, he'd be even more amazing, maybe even pushing 10,000 aura. I still remember when I thought 3,000 by UA would be a dream goal. Look at me now, huh? Taka sneered proudly at his numbers. Of course, this was only the beginning. When UA began, so would the show events, the kind that shook society to its core. Recognition would follow when he got involved, not merely city level as it was right now, but the kind that encompassed all of Japan. No, things had gotten crazy in the later arcs, maybe even global level crazy. How much aura would that bring in? He wasn't near All Might's level yet. But if he ever reached that global level of fame, then maybe, All Might would be a thing of the past. But for now, there was still farming to do. Aura farming. Speaking of farming, wonder how I look from the crowd's perspective. Taka scratched his chin. Since I'm nearby, might as well check. Could help me polish my act for when I drop the big song. With that quick decision, he jogged out of the park and into the busy streets, weaving through people until he reached his destination. Somebody get me through this nightmare, I can't control myself. And there he was. Or rather, one of his clones. Up on a rooftop, in his usual black hoodie and mask, playing passionately on his guitar while a chaotic battle raged below, where several irritated heroes clashed with a villain wearing a similar type of expression. Blending into the crowd, Taka, with his hands in his pockets, watched with an analytical eye. I should move more. That looks too stiff. Luckily, the fight below pulls most of the focus. He rubbed his chin, mulling over the performance. But what else could I do? Maybe I could try flying around the battlefield instead of just staying in the same spot, but holding my instruments with AP while also playing a song is already troublesome enough. Notifications kept pinging in the corner of his vision as aura trickled in from the crowd, but he ignored them. By now, he was used to it. Maybe even a little sick of the constant ringing. Eventually, though, he grew bored of watching and turned on his heel to jog away. He had already watched enough. He could always think about what to do while being in the comfort of his home. Besides, loitering at the crime scene was the kind of thing that got serial killers caught. This wasn't murder, and neither was he a serial killer, but, close enough. 10 minutes later, he was back home. Click. Closing the door behind him, the first thing Taka saw was Seiji lounging on the couch, arm draped lazily across the backrest while the TV flickered in front of him. At first, Taka was just going to head straight to his room, until he noticed what was playing on the screen. It was himself again, doing his concert. Right on cue, Seiji turned his head lazily toward him. Yo, Taka. How was your run? Runish. Yeah, that sounds about right. Seiji snorted and glanced back at the TV, where the image of his clone rocking could be seen. This guy's been playing the same damn song like 6 times now. Doesn't he know anything else? Taka's eyebrow twitched. Composing is hard, you know. Yeah, but I wouldn't be showing up this often without something new. At this point, that guy's just chasing fame, recycling content. Taka's teeth ground together, but he managed to keep his face straight. With a sigh, he muttered. I suppose. If only the heroes in this city were competent enough to catch him, whatever. Guess he'll just keep getting away. He couldn't see it, but he knew Seiji's eyebrow twitched too. Hey, Taka, you up for a spar? I'm feeling rusty. Taka smirked. Why should I deal with that? Go bother your girlfriend. Tisk. You too, huh? Inappropriate this, unprofessional that, everyone's just jealous of my peerless charm. Since they can't pull a pro-hero baddie, they gotta drag me down. More like peerless dumbness. With that costume of yours, I don't even know how you got her to kiss you. If it were me, I'd have run for my life. Jealous, aren't you, little Taka? That's right, already entering puberty and still no girlfriend. Don't worry, since I'm your guardian, it's my responsibility to instruct you in the arts of awesummary and baddie pulling. Shove it. Before Seiji could answer, Taka walked to his room and shut the door. Now in the safety of his sanctuary, Taka rubbed his temples in frustration. What an annoying guy. Flopping onto his bed, he grabbed his phone. As usual, he went straight to checking clips of himself, a habit he developed due to watching views in videos where he appeared skyrocket, which got him the dopamine he always needed. He scrolled and scrolled, skimming past dozens of videos, until one caught his ear. It was his first performance, the Devil May Cry track. But it wasn't his own clip. Instead, it was someone breakdancing wildly to the rhythm. Taka couldn't help but watch, fully drawn in by the insane moves. By the time the video ended, his thumb had already hit like. Something he almost never bothered doing, even when he enjoyed something. That was sick, he muttered. Then a thought struck him. He'd noticed earlier how stiff his performances looked. If he could move like that, wouldn't it make his shows way better? And it seemed he wasn't the only one who thought the same. You have finally taken notice of the mesmerizing art of dance. But you have yet to realize its true potential. Let the aura farmer within you bloom further as you open your mind to the wonders of corporeal expression. Quest conditions. Filled right pointing small triangle learn a dance style to a skillful degree. Filled right pointing small triangle reach a new level in martial skill by enduring a fight with a serious Seiji for 1 full minute. Filled right pointing small triangle no enhancing yourself or using aura projection during spars. Reward. Plus 500 aura, gain the skill, let's dance. Taka's mouth twisted. Seriously, what's up with these missions? Still, since it was asking him for an improvement in martial arts, that meant this skill was probably something good, right? His eyes slowly turned toward the door, hesitant. Then, with a sigh, he stood up, pulled it open, and yelled. Oi, Seiji. About that spar. Comma. To be continued. And we have skipped time by a greater margin this time. Now, only 3 to 4 months remain for UA. Also, since it's a time skip, here's a referential image of how I imagine Taka. Greater than. It just looks as edgy as Taka would want to look on the outside. So it was the perfect appearance. Like, look at that face, you'd probably think he's a cold emo teenager like Todoroki. Then you realize he's probably thinking of going to take a dump. I might draw an actual picture myself, but you never know with me. Anyway, I hope you liked the chapter. Further improvement. Some days later. Comma. Thud. Taka hit the ground hard, a small cloud of dust rising as his back slammed against the earth. Shit, he muttered, staring helplessly at the blue sky above, then his gaze dropped to his most hated nemesis. Seiji. The monkey hero knelt beside him, tilting his head slightly. Not that I don't enjoy these spars where I don't have to hold back, kid. I've been under a lot of stress lately, but what's got you so motivated all of a sudden? Not long ago you looked like you dreaded even hearing the word spar, and now you're begging me to go all out. Taka rolled his eyes, breathing heavily. There was a brief pause, determination settling in his gaze as he stared at the sky resolutely. Then, he spoke. I need to become stronger. This time, it was Seiji who rolled his eyes. Tisk. Got anything more cliché than that? No. Well, whatever. Seiji stood up, brushing the dust off his clothes. Still, if you're being serious, I can tell you it's gonna take a while. You've improved a lot. Your control over your balance, movement, breathing, even your voice, strangely, has become weirdly refined and measured, but you're still lacking up here. He tapped his temple. Taka lifted an eyebrow. I need a thicker skull. Look at you, still cracking jokes, huh? Seiji's mouth twitched. I meant that while you've got the moves ingrained, you still lack foresight, just like when we started all of this training stuff. You don't predict or anticipate, you just throw things out and hope they work. If you could fight like that one time you copied my signature move and caught me off guard, then you'd improve a lot in one go. You don't let me land that hit anymore, though. Well, I don't like getting hit in the balls. Fair enough. Listen, Taka, fights are like a dance. Huh. It's a constant back and forth of learned moves. Depending on what your opponent does, you pick from your arsenal the move that counters it. Of course, your opponent does the same, so you have to anticipate his anticipation, but he probably anticipates your anticipation, so you have to anticipate even that. Though, it's likely he also anticipates. A small pebble hit Seiji's clothes, making him stop and glare at Taka with a deadpan. I get it, geez. You get the meaning, but you haven't ingrained it yet. Seiji leaned in and flicked Taka's forehead lightly. Ack. Taka groaned and rubbed the spot where he had just received domestic abuse. Meanwhile, Seiji stared at him amusedly. After a bit of letting him catch his breath, however, he helped him get up. The earth wasn't a good place to lie down, after all, at least not for the poor clothes. With Taka back on his feet, Seiji went back into the house, leaving Taka sitting on the wooden porch to his own devices. Whether to continue resting, muse on his shortcomings, or imagine weird things, it was up to Taka. Fights are like a dance, huh? He muttered, rubbing the sore spots where he'd been hit. He opened his mission panel. You have finally taken notice of the mesmerizing art of dance. But you have yet to realize its true potential. Let the aura farmer within you bloom further as you open your mind to the wonders of corporeal expression. Quest conditions. Filled right pointing small triangle learn a dance style to a skillful degree. Filled right pointing small triangle reach a new level in martial skill by enduring a fight with a serious Seiji for 1 full minute, without enhancing yourself or using aura projection. Reward. Plus 500 aura, gain the skill, Let's Dance. Maybe that was the trick. Through dancing, he could learn that rhythm, that flow of back and forth Seiji talked about. Or something like that. Maybe. On second thought, wouldn't he need a dance partner for that? The mission only said to learn dancing styles, not practice with a partner. But dancing often required a partner, so maybe it was implied. Not the style I picked, though. Taka raised an eyebrow. Had the system overlooked the style, or did it really not matter that a partner wasn't exactly required? Never mind, he still couldn't figure out what the mission even wanted from him. Still, talking about dancing, I should go check on them. As he had that thought, he stood up. Moments later, and under Seiji's watchful and almost suspicious eyes, he left the house and began jogging down the road. Might as well make progress on the daily quest while I'm at it. With that thought, he made his way through the city. His trouble radar skill went off a few times. There ain't no rest for the wicked, after all, but none of them were apocalypse-level alerts, just the usual hero versus average villain stuff. So, he didn't bother to stop to farm aura. As for why? Finally here, he sighed, coming to a stop. The reason was right in front of him. A huge, abandoned building. Apparently, it used to be a school in the past, but now it was nothing more than a perfect setting for ghost stories. Only, there was something else inside besides the ghosts. After making sure no one was watching by looking around carefully, Taka floated up and slipped in through a broken window, landing inside a wrecked classroom. Scattered chairs, a half-collapsed board, holes in the ceiling, true decadence, exactly what you'd expect from a long-forgotten school. But this wasn't his destination. Closing the class door behind him, he moved down the desolate hallways until he reached a room labeled, Music Club. Shaw. Without hesitation, he slid the door open. And what greeted him was a strange sight. Well, look what the cat dragged in. Fresh meat. Don't you know you have to bring offerings when showing up unannounced? His clones, multiple of them, sat around the room like wannabe gangsters, each one striking a ridiculous pose, trying their best to look intimidating. Taka sighed. Stop it. I just came to check on you guys. We can see that. But why, though? Got bored being alone. As expected of the loneliest Aura farmer in history. Taka's sweat dropped. Hey now, why the hell are you all being so sassy? You do realize that once you're done with your task, you'll come back to being me, right? Well, you make us work our asses off while you stay home and chill, so I think we've earned the right to sass you. What do you mean by take it easy? I just got my face kicked in by Seiji. Right, I forgot about that. Did you at least land a hit this time? No. That mission's gonna take a while, huh? Well, I've got some thoughts about that. That's actually why I came to check on you bunch. The clones tilted their heads in unison. Taka focused on one in particular. You. How's the breakdance learning going? The clone sighed, massaging his neck and back. It's been a pain, literally. My whole body feels sore. The amount of movement this requires is insane. You should remake me and give me a bigger chunk of your aura. With what I've got, I can barely move right. I'm pretty sure you have enough aura to match my normal physical stats. Shouldn't that be enough? Well, you're not exactly the most athletic person around, you know. The clone deadpanned. Taka deadpanned right back. Again, I'm you, and you're me. Stop sassing me. The clone rolled his eyes. Consider it the healthy amount of self-deprecation you never give yourself. Besides, it's funny. Even though you'll come back and realize you were mocking yourself. Yeah, whatever. Taka sighed. How long do you think it'll take before you master breakdancing? I dunno. A week or two, maybe. This stuff's hard. A week, huh? Taka groaned. Alright, continue as you were. With that, he waved the clone off and turned toward the others. They were sitting right beside a group of other instruments, including a drum set, a bass, and even a piano. It was quite a collection, considering Taka was a teenager who, until not long ago, barely had enough to buy simple skincare products. But fortunately, his QuirkTube channel had amassed quite an audience, so he got enough money to afford the instruments. Barely. But being a teenager living under the care of someone else, he could afford to spend that much. Thus, that's how and why he had begun using these instruments in the first place. How about you guys? How's the practice going? Taka asked, raising an eyebrow as the clones remained in their delinquent-like pose. The clones grinned proudly. We've got everything in the bag. Just a bit more practice, and our aura reserves will skyrocket once we perform the show. Taka nodded, smiling faintly. Then, he turned and glanced at the last clone in the room, who was sitting nearby but wasn't doing anything in particular. What about you? What do you think? From what I'm hearing, it's pretty good. The clone gave him a thumbs up. When you're creating something, you tend to see every little detail, so much that you stop seeing it like others do. That's why Taka had made a clone uninvolved in the song's creation, to get the reaction of someone hearing it for the first time. Of course, it wasn't as effective as he would have liked. Every day, his clones disappeared and their memories returned to him, meaning his new clones from the next day already had those memories baked in. So he couldn't just create a clone to react to the whole song from scratch, but had to settle for simply making him react to whatever progress the other team of clones made. It gave him a fresh perspective each day, even if not a fully detached and unaware one. So, what's your wisdom after today's progress? Taka asked. The clone rubbed his chin thoughtfully. I'd say it lacks a bit of intensity. Is that so? Taka turned toward the clones practicing their instruments. Well, you heard him, though I guess it'll be tomorrow's batch who has to worry about that. Scratching his hair in mild frustration, he sighed. And with that, he turned around and walked toward the door. Well, you guys keep it. I'll do my best to punch Seiji, but I'm not making any promises. Power. 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 His clones let out a strange war cry as he slid the door shut behind him. Quote. By the time he found himself alone in the hallway, Taka's sweat dropped. Am I really that weird inside? Maybe their technically short lives had made them bring out the true weirdo he feigned he wasn't. Shaking his head with a sigh, he turned and made his way out, this time, leaving the school for good. Once he was back on the street, he began running through a mental checklist of how things were going. Like his clone had said, there was only a week or two before he eventually mastered breakdancing. Maybe, mastered, was too strong a word, though. But by then, he felt confident he'd be able to do it with proficiency. Maybe not the best, but he'd at least know how to breakdance to a skillful degree as the mission asked. Once that was done, all that'd be left would be to last one full minute in a spar against a serious Seiji to complete the mission. He wasn't worried about that. While he may be getting beaten to the ground right now, he would eventually find the trick to tabling the turns. For now, though, he would have to continue having his face shoved in. Almost like a Dark Souls boss. Taka sneered, recalling otherworldly memories. Then there was the matter of his song. As much as he wanted to release it right now, and relish in the tons of aura it would bring, even more so if he planned properly the time, place, and circumstance under which he presented it, he had to grit his teeth and endure it for now. This was his own project, not another plagiarism like the earlier ones. And because of that, he couldn't help but be a perfectionist about it. It wasn't like before, where he didn't bother with learning other instruments for the DMC song, or when he did some playback for the Animal I Have Become song so he could focus on playing the guitar and nothing else. Now, he wanted none of that. No cutting corners, and no sparing effort in creating it. He wanted his creation to succeed. No, not just succeed, he wanted it to shock everyone. He wanted it to be the best song, even better than any of the ones he'd stolen before. It was a test for himself. Proof that he could be great without relying on others or on sad things like plagiarism. The system had given him the tools. All he needed was to prove he had the drive and determination to go through with it. This aura farming thing sure is brainwashing me, huh? Taka thought with a wry smile. If it were his old self, the one from before he got the system, he wouldn't have cared about plagiarism as long as it made him stronger. But now, the very idea made him feel cheap. Like, he could be better than that. But I guess that's what it means to be an aura farmer, huh? With an amused scoff, Taka's walk home continued for a while more. It would have been great if that's where it ended, but... Quote. Question mark exclamation mark quote. Suddenly, his trouble radar went off, making his body go stiff, and his eyes widen like platters. Normally, when the skill was activated, it didn't warrant such a reaction, but this time, it was different. There was trouble incoming, yes. There wasn't a change in that function of the skill. But the level of danger he felt coming from it, it was unprecedented. On a scale of 1 to 10 on the danger level, the previous villain attacks where his skill had warned him about had been between 2 to 4. Nothing too grand. But this was a solid 7. It may not seem like that big of a difference using the scale, but the difference between the feelings given by both was like heaven and earth. One was a small sense of dread, like entering somewhere you shouldn't, hence doing something illegal. It felt slightly wrong. This alarm, however, felt like watching everything go to shit without being able to do anything. Staring helplessly as everything crumbles around. They were not even close. Startled, his eyes darted around, scanning his surroundings. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. And yet, that only made it more unsettling. Should I leave? I have a feeling this might be more than I can chew. Taka swallowed nervously, taking a step back. Sure, he was strong right now, but in a world where quirks of every kind and shape existed, thinking you were invincible was the dumbest thing you could do. Besides, he hadn't brought his usual Rocknesis gear, so if he stuck around, his identity would be at risk. Yeah, this is stupid, Taka muttered, sneering to himself as he started turning back. In the original series, there had never been any mention of an event like this, so it was probably something that got resolved on its own. Even if he wasn't here, everything would most likely go fine. Right. Well, now that he thought about it, it wouldn't have been strange if there had been a few casualties, but not enough to make it a society-shaking event, hence not worth appearing in the show. Or maybe he was wrong for thinking of both this reality and the show as the same. Regardless of what may have happened in the show, this was real life. And things never went as expected in real life. Taka stopped mid-step. His eyes shifted to the side, scanning his surroundings, almost as if expecting something. No, he was searching for something. Something like a mission. And yet, nothing came. Do you have nothing to say about this system? He asked. Do you really need a mission for this, host? I think you know what you should do. Taka blinked. Then, a wry smile spread across his face as he let out a scoff. Yeah, I suppose I do, huh? As the words left his mouth, his gaze sharpened. He took a deep breath and swept his hair back, his usual leisure and bored attitude shifting to a more serious one. Then stepped forward. To where? directly toward where the alarms were ringing. As for the reason, for I am an Aura farmer. To be continued. Now, the base of operations has been revealed, along with some of the process Taka goes through to improve. And now, another hurdle appears before Taka. Will he triumph, or will he suck? Also, was that last part tough? Or did it make you cringe? Real battle. Sitting around a round table in a dark, damp room, three people faced each other while one of them pointed at a screen on the wall. The screen displayed a map of what seemed to be a bank, and many notes regarding guards' movements and shifts, cameras, etc. And that's pretty much the plan. Questions? Said the one presenting, a broad, tall bald man in a leather jacket and jeans, his glare sharp and commanding. The person to his right, a woman with spiky, static charged hair, lazily raised her hand. Dressed in a tank top and military pants, she spoke with a drawl. Yeah, why this city? I had to endure a 3-hour drive just to attend this little meeting of yours. Couldn't we just have done it in Tokyo? The man snorted. We are here because the heroes in this city suck. A few might be trouble, but the rest are just fodder we'll crush easily if it comes to that. With such weak resistance, our little plan has a much better chance of working. Neat. The woman nodded, satisfied. His gaze shifted to the third member, a man whose entire body seemed to be made of jagged stone, some pieces smooth, others sharp, like a golem come to life. Any questions, Rocky? Yeah, the Rocky man rumbled. What do we do with the heroes that get in the way? Why are you even asking that? The leader scoffed. We kill them, obviously. The stone man grunted, accepting the answer. Phew, the woman stretched with a crooked grin, cracking her neck. Man, knowing the big league heroes won't be around makes me feel way more at ease. We're finally in a pond where we're the big fish, huh? The man sneered, fishing a cigarette from his pocket and lighting it. Now that you're mentioning it, yeah, it's been a while since I've been on top of the food chain. Reminds me of my school days, no kid could match my quirk, and they were all terrified. Teachers too. The whole school was practically my playground. The golem man frowned, not angry, but clearly skeptical. Still, are you sure the heroes here are that pathetic? From what I've heard, this place does have a few aces who could give us trouble. It might not be Tokyo, but it's still a big city. Ah, right. The leader smirked. Forgot to include that in the presentation. There are a few, but I've already handled them. I sent some of our guys to act as diversions once we start. They'll stir up chaos near those heroes' patrol zones, keeping them busy while we get the job done. This'll be easy peasy. The woman smirked. Though, he added, narrowing his eyes, there are a couple of pests I couldn't account for. Who? The stone man asked. The first supposed to be the strongest hero in the city. Calls himself Super Monkey. Ranked 16th in the charts. The two others looked unimpressed. His patrol patterns are a mess, random, chaotic, he just seems to go wherever he pleases. Sometimes he doesn't even show up. Because of that, I couldn't pin down where he'll be, so he's a wild card. We might run into him, or we might never see him at all. He doesn't sound like much with that name, the woman said. Yeah, but you never know, the man shrugged, then his tone hardened. The other one who might cause trouble, isn't a hero. That got their attention. Both looked up, confused. It's some kind of local vigilante, the man continued, puffing some smoke from the cigarette. He's been gaining popularity lately. Apparently, he shows up during hero and villain fights, plays a song, and knocks out the villains if the heroes can't finish the job before the song ends. Again, doesn't sound like much, the woman said. And I'll say it again, you never know. An acquaintance of mine with a pretty decent quirk got taken down by him. How decent are we talking? Asked the Rocky man. Fairly good. Of course, nothing compared to ours, the leader replied with a smirk. We are high-ranked villains, after all. It wouldn't be fair to judge him by our level. The woman laughed. Yeah, that'd be unfair. The Rocky man didn't laugh, instead, he squinted. Any info on their quirks? Super Monkey's got a mutant-type quirk that gives him the characteristics of a monkey, like a tail, big hands, or a stupid face. As for the vigilante, I think it's something akin to telekinesis, but not exactly. He's a mystery to everyone these days. Couldn't dig up much. The woman snorted. Well, neither of them sounds like a problem. With the three of us on one team, even the heroes in Tokyo would have their hands full. And it was no wonder she thought that. The three were A-class villains, infamous ones at that. The bald man was Reaper Sight. A villain charged with multiple assassinations of influential people and heroes, robbery at gunpoint, dozens of homicides, arson, etc. His quirk, zapping, lets him teleport rapidly to places within his eyesight with a non-existent cooldown, something that made him a target difficult to catch, and that the villain used along with guns to secure quick assassinations or hero murders. The woman was Electraction. Known for multiple successful robberies at jewelry stores or similar places of luxury, and was also charged with multiple homicides left behind during her delictual activities. Her quirk, Electrocharge, lets her transform her entire body to electricity momentarily, and also charge her own body with electricity, so any kind of attack she launches can discharge up to 20,000 volts. Is this correctly described, chat? I'm no electrician. And finally, the man filled with stones was none other than Titanophyte. An ex-price owner who had been charged with dozens of millions of yen in destruction of private property, multiple homicide, and the hospitalization of heroes and officers alike. His quirk, Stone Shell, gives him an outer armor of hard and sturdy rocks that he can mold, limitedly to his desire, sharpening them or thickening them slightly. A trio of powerful villains, something not seen in a long time, since villains rarely work together. With this team, even if both those guys show up, I doubt they'll be able to do much. She laughed loudly, her confidence absolute. That super monkey guy isn't needed, said suddenly a calm voice from behind them. I alone am enough to deal with the three of you. Instantly, their eyes widened. They spun around, shocked to find someone had entered the room without them noticing, a lone figure leaning casually against the wall, staring at them with cold, indifferent eyes. Who are you? Electraction shouted, her spiky hair crackling as a small current of electricity surged through it. Titanophyte scowled as the rocks covering his body expanded, making him larger and more imposing. Reaper's sight narrowed his eyes, studying the intruder before a smirk spread across his face. I see, so it's you. Rockinessus, right? Who? The other two asked in unison. The vigilante, Reaper said. I believe that's his nickname. Rockinessus closed his eyes, his voice calm and steady. That's what I'm called these days. Why are you here? Reaper frowned, his smirk fading. I thought you only showed up during hero-villain fights. We haven't done anything yet, have we? Rockinessus uncrossed his arms, his stance tightening. Hands flexing, as if ready to fight. I was just passing by. I see, Reaper nodded slowly. Then, kill him, comma. Degree. The street, comma. Pedestrians bustled along the sidewalks. People darted in and out of restaurants or stopped at food stalls to grab snacks for the road. Traffic was awful. A line of cars stretched down the street, the blaring of horns filling the air like a chaotic symphony. And yet, despite the noise and confusion, it was everyday life. Ordinary. Predictable. What wasn't ordinary, however, was the massive explosion that suddenly tore through a nearby building. Boom! A deafening blast rocked the street. Debris rained down, dust billowed into the air, and the screams came almost instantly, high-pitched, panicked, echoing through the chaos. What's happening? Is it a villain? The crowd erupted in panic, scattering in every direction while staring wide-eyed at the rising cloud of smoke. Then, as the dust began to settle and silence tried to return. Swoosh! The cloud exploded outward as a figure was launched through it, soaring high before crashing down onto the street near the retreating crowd. He skidded backward for several meters before finally coming to a halt. Black hoodie. Black joggers. Masked face. Everyone knew who he was. Rockinessus. No way. The real one. He's here. Terror turned into excitement. AAA ARG, D. Only to twist back into terror again. An enormous figure burst from the smoke behind him, Titanophyte. A towering, rock-covered monster that looked more like a walking mountain than a man. Despite his size, his speed was terrifying, each step shaking the ground. The sheer force of his charge made everyone nearby stumble back in fear. Ugh! A low grunt escaped Rockinessus as he steadied himself after being hurled away. But there was no time to breathe. Titanophyte was already upon him. Rockinessus raised his hand, aiming it at the giant. For a moment, Titanophyte's momentum faltered, slowed, his massive body enveloped in a faint aura. Yet it wasn't enough. You think you can stop me, runt? Ah! Rockinessus grunted, unable to hold him completely. Titanophyte's massive fist came swinging down. With no other choice, Rockinessus released his grip and leapt back, dodging the strike by mere centimeters. Before the giant could strike again, Rockinessus propelled himself upward, soaring into the air, out of reach. He looked ready to attack again. But just as his aura began to gather around the giant, bang! A distant explosion, sharp like a gunshot, rang out. Rakanessus barely had time to widen his eyes before a projectile struck his shoulder. His hoodie sizzled, smoke curling from the hole burned through the fabric, but his skin only showed a bruise. Bang! Another shot. This time, Rakanessus' aura flared around him like a shimmering force field before the bullet could reach. As a result, the bullet slowed enormously, and when it hit him, it barely bumped onto him lightly before falling powerlessly to the ground far below. With the danger gone, Rakanessus scanned the surroundings until his eyes caught Reaper Sight perched atop a distant building. He shot forward, intent on taking him down first. Aura already shooting in the villain's direction. Quote. Question mark exclamation mark quote. But before he could reach him, the man vanished, like he had just become air. Bang! And then, another shot rang out from behind. The bullet slowed at the last second again, failing to deal any damage by the time it hit him. This guy. But before Rakanessus could locate the shooter again, a giant shadow fell over him. Titanophyte. Warg. The massive villain came crashing down from above, fist swinging with brutal momentum. Rakanessus' hand shot out, moving his aura to block the impact. The punch slowed mid-air, yes, but still landed. Bam! Instants later, Rakanessus slammed into the ground like a meteor, concrete shattering beneath him. Dust erupted, swallowing the street. He staggered to his feet a moment later, unsteady but still standing. Then, the giant began falling upon him. But as the giant's shadow grew around him, a flicker of pleasedness passed by Rakanessus' eyes. Now that the villain was in the air, he didn't have the ground anymore to exert any leverage and overpower his aura. In the air, he was vulnerable. He focused his aura on the monster, and soon, energy began to wrap around him. Bang! Another shot struck Rakanessus in the back, making him stumble and breaking his concentration. That fucker. Rakanessus muttered, eyes widening faintly before a frown took over. He looked ready to turn around and look for Reaper again, but before he could recover, a flash of electricity crackled beside him. Hell yeah! Electraction appeared from a burst of lightning, her charged fist swinging straight at him. Rakanessus reacted instantly, his aura flaring to immobilize her. Bang! But another shot came. This one hit his lower back, just enough to make his control falter. Titanophyte broke free, finally getting to touch the ground, and Electraction's punch connected. Bam! Crackle! Electricity burst across Rakanessus' body, lighting him up in a violent flash. Smoke billowed from his clothes, parts of them charred and blackened. But even then, he moved, faster than she expected. His aura flared again, wrapping around Electraction as he prepared to slam her into the ground. Yet before he could, Titanophyte came charging in once more, roaring as he swung. Rakanessus switched tactics. He threw Electraction at the charging giant, forcing Titanophyte to halt to catch her. Using that split-second distraction, Rakanessus leapt back, putting distance between them. His breathing was ragged now, and a bead of sweat rolled down his temple. Bang! Another bullet whizzed toward him, but his aura barrier was up again, it struck and bounced off harmlessly. Rakanessus exhaled, eyes narrowing. Then, he let out a nervous laugh amidst mutters. This might have been more than I could chew. Degree. Taka's pav. This might have been more than I could chew. I hadn't thought much about fighting these three villains at once. After all, with how much aura I'd racked up these past months, I didn't think they'd be able to do much against my now greater aura projection. After all, no villain had been able to get out of my grasp once my aura enveloped them. But in hindsight, I should have been more careful and considered the numerical advantage more. Trouble radar had warned me they meant trouble, after all. Turns out, I was slightly wrong in my assessment. These guys were stronger than they looked. And worse, they knew how to gang up on someone. These bastards were coordinated. I barely had time to focus on one before another popped up and hit me. Not to mention that this fight wasn't seeming to be very favorable for me so far, judging from their abilities, at least. First, there was the bald guy in the leather jacket. He had what seemed like a teleportation quirk and used a sniper rifle with it, basically a pest that hit and ran. Or more like shot and ran. It wasn't much of a problem since with my increased defense stat, bullets could barely bruise me, and even less the more aura I poured into the stat. I could also use aura projection to form a shield around me that slowed the bullet down, lessening the damage even further, and allowing me to not need to pour every single aura into defense. Why slow the bullet down and not block it completely like a literal shield, you ask? Because my aura worked like a hand, an omnidirectional, not physical, and multi-percent hand, that I could manifest all around me to grab things, pull, or push. But the aura wasn't solid. So I could only use it to push things away from me when using it as a shield, like just now. So yeah, slowing down the bullets, no problem. Blocking them completely. I could, but that'd require me to actually see the bullet incoming, and use my aura to try and catch it instead of pushing away. The main problem wasn't the bullets, though, the problem was that he stayed far away, and when I went after him, he went somewhere else. I couldn't catch him, so he was a constant annoyance while I dealt with the other two. Then there was the matter of the female villain. So far from what I'd seen, she could turn into electricity, or something close to it, and move at super high speed in that state, while also using the energy to charge her attacks like she had done with that earlier punch. Even with increased defense, electricity was great at bypassing protections, so yeah, it had hurt. Not to mention that with how fast she was, it'd be hard to react on time if I got too distracted with the other two. If I were taken by surprise, it might be dangerous. Besides that, I wasn't sure if I'd be able to grab her with my aura when she was in that electric state, but as far as concerned, when she looked like a person, it hadn't seemed like there was a problem, at least she didn't seem capable of escaping when I grabbed her earlier. So, I just needed to find the time to catch her and take her down in one go. And finally, there was the rock guy. At first, I thought he was just super durable with all those rocks around him, but no, he had insane strength, speed, and durability. So much that even with all my aura, around 2 tons of force, the bastard could still muscle through it, even when slowed. My only chance at having aura work on him would be in the air, like earlier, where he wouldn't have anything to apply force to, and where he'd be at my complete mercy. But it was a wonder if I'd be able to get him to jump again. So, in summary, these guys were rather bad news for the way I've fought until now. The woman was too fast for me to react properly, the mountain guy was too powerful and overpowered my current aura projection, and the sniper guy was too far away for me to do anything about him, making him a constant annoyance. So, the question was, what the hell do I do now? My eyes darted to my status, a nervous sweat drop running down my temple. Status page. Filled right pointing small triangle strength, 119. Filled right pointing small triangle defense, 238 right pointing arrow 1038. Filled right pointing small triangle aura projection, 3059. Total aura, 5309 right pointing arrow 3859, 73%. First clone's aura, 3506, 5%. Second clone's aura, 305, 6%. Third clone's aura, 305, 6%. Fourth clone's aura, 305, 6%. Fifth clone's aura, 203, 7%. Skills. Filled right pointing small triangle clean. Filled right pointing small triangle trouble radar. Filled right pointing small triangle connoisseur. Filled right pointing small triangle pain is just a feeling. Filled right pointing small triangle immovable object. Filled right pointing small triangle true speaking. Filled right pointing small triangle true breathing. Filled right pointing small triangle true walking. Filled right pointing small triangle good job beating me, but that was merely a clone. Filled right pointing small triangle efficient body. The first answer was clear. I had to dispel my clones. That'd give me back half of the aura I'd spent, and the rest would recover over time. That would give me a decent power boost, from around 70% to 85%, while the rest of the aura recovered over time, but even then, I wasn't sure it'd be enough to take on all 3 of these jumpers. I could deal with them one-on-one, sure. But together, not a chance. So, what else could I do? I glared at the screen with a deadpan expression. What? No conveniently timed mission with a new skill this time, system. There's no need. You already have what you need to beat them, host. If we're talking in more murderous terms, maybe I could take out the woman, but the other two. Too slippery or too damn tough, even if I went all out. Not to mention that I don't want to cross that line yet. Not when the police are already after me. That'd just be giving them more reasons to take me seriously. That's not what I meant. Then what? All I can say is, your thinking has been too uncreative until now. The hell's that supposed to mean? I looked back at my status window. Uncreative. In what way? My skills. Most of them are just simple buffs or, look cool while doing it, types. Maybe immovable object. No, what use would taking more damage just for not being knocked back have? Unless, maybe it's telling me to combine it with a defense boost, to catch them off guard. But that's too obvious, isn't it? It must be talking about something else. What's wrong? Getting tired. Sadly, not the best time for deep thinking. The woman and the rock guy were walking toward me now. Slowly. She wore that smug, arrogant grin, and he had that same scowl plastered across his face. I'll figure it out later. For now, though, first things first. You have dissolved your clones. Total aura used, 27%. You have recovered 13.5% of the used aura. 725. The rest will recover naturally during the next hour. Instantly, I felt power usher back to me, along with the annoying memory influx. I grit my teeth at the dizzy sensation. But then, as it cleared up, my eyes shone with newfound determination. Right away, I poured the aura I had recovered into aura projection. Status page. Filled right pointing small triangle strength, 119. Filled right pointing small triangle defense, 1038. Filled right pointing small triangle aura projection, 3059 right pointing arrow 3784. Total aura, 3859 right pointing arrow 4584, 86, 5%. Recovering, 13.5%, 59 minutes, 56 seconds left. I took a deep breath and cracked my neck, humming in satisfaction as my bones creaked slightly. Alright, round 2, bitches. To be continued. For those who had been expecting Gigantomachia's event with Mina and Kirishima, sorry for the disappointment. Honestly, I had not even considered it before. But now that you've brought it to my mind, I think I can do something with that, so I look forward to it. New move. The battle, which seemed to have come to a momentary stop, resumed abruptly, with both parties clashing fiercely. Electraction dashed in first, using her electric-enhanced speed to get to Taka first in but an instant, her charged punch swinging savagely towards him as a wild grin spread across her face. Die. Crackle. Before it could connect, however, Taka simply raised a hand. Question mark exclamation mark quote. Then, in the blink of an eye, his aura expanded and engulfed Electraction, immobilizing her midair. Let me go. She demanded as she struggled, releasing electricity to try and shake herself off. To her surprise, however. As you wish. Taka proceeded to wave his hand with dismissal, as if batting a fly. That alone was enough to send her hurling back in the direction of the still approaching Titanophyte. The rocky villain's charge was forced to a halt once he noticed his companion flying in his direction, catching her before she flew past, and glaring at her with annoyance. What the hell are you doing? If you're not going to be useful, get out of the. Don't get distracted. Status page. Filled right pointing small triangle strength. 119 right pointing arrow 2221. Filled right pointing small triangle defense. 1038 right pointing arrow 2.221. Filled right pointing small triangle aura projection. 3784 right pointing arrow 499. What Titanophyte didn't expect was for Taka to appear in front of him with just a moment of distraction, fist winding up a punch. Exclamation mark quote. Without a chance to react, and with both hands occupied carrying Electraction, all Titanophyte could do was receive the punch head-on. A fraction of a second later, the impact came. Clang. A metallic ring drowned the vicinity after that, and to the surprise of everyone watching the fight, the one who was sent hurling several meters away after the impact, despite his humongous size, was Titanophyte. He left a trail of broken concrete as his feet dug into the ground to halt himself. What was more surprising, however, was the huge crack on Titanophyte's stony chest, exposing his inner skin. After recovering his balance, the villain inspected the crack with shocked yet angry eyes, passing a hand through it in disbelief. What did you do? Taka simply raised his fist, showing his slightly reddened knuckles. I hit you. Titanophyte's breath became more labored, and the look in his eyes sharpened. You hit me, you say. His fist clenched, and he dropped the already recuperating Electraction onto the floor, who barely caught herself and sent Titanophyte a venomous look. But the villain simply ignored her. Then, he began to walk again towards Taka, the rocks surrounding his body growing larger and sharper with each step, almost like a terrifying and enormous stone hedgehog. only for his slow walk to quickly turn into a full-on sprint, like a bull charging at its prey. Then, how about I hit you back? The villain's eyes reddened, and suddenly, what had been a stone fist began sharpening into an eerie spike, making the nearby spectators gasp. Taka, however, remained still. His figure relaxed and composed before the incoming threat. And soon, the dangerous weaponized arm began falling upon him with a weight and speed that would impale a human being with terrifying ease. And yet, just as it was about to reach Taka, one finger. That's all he lifted to block the attack. Status page. Filled right pointing small triangle strength, 2.221 right pointing arrow 200. Filled right pointing small triangle defense, 2.221 right pointing arrow 4.741. Filled right pointing small triangle aura projection, 499 right pointing arrow 0. Inimmovable object activated. The ominous spike, which had painted a picture of blood and skewering, came to a stop just like that, letting out a sharp metal ring as it struck. Clang. And Taka, who had simply used one finger to block the spike's tip, remained unmoved and unshaken, his posture still tall and relaxed. Furthermore, is that all? He asked, his tone equally unimpressed and teasing. That was enough to break Titanophyte. What? No, how does that make? It's impossible. Titanophyte snapped his arm away, stumbling back in shock. Status page. Filled right pointing small triangle strength, 200 right pointing arrow 2.221. Filled right pointing small triangle defense, 4.741 right pointing arrow 2.221. Filled right pointing small triangle aura projection, 0 right pointing arrow 499. Sadly, he wasn't about to get away that easily. Before he could fully escape, Taka's other hand, the opposite of the one that still had its finger raised mockingly, clenched into a fist and followed after Titanophyte, who, seeing he couldn't dodge it, decided to block it with his rocky and spiky forearms. Clang. The same metallic echo from before filled the area, however, this time it didn't come alone. Crack. The sound of rock cracking apart and crumbling came right after, making everyone, including Titanophyte, stare at his arms in shock. This can't be. The powerful guard of rock crumbled and fell to the ground uselessly, showing the reddened and bruised human skin beneath. No, 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 my invincible armor, how could you, someone who was barely able to hold me back earlier, shatter it? Taka didn't answer, but simply studied the rupture with a satisfied grin beneath his mask. Turns out, I was right about changing stats for this one. Although he evidently favored AP over his other stats, always pouring his gains onto it right away, in this case, it was hard countered due to its low offensive nature. After all, AP worked only like a pseudo-telekinesis that used aura instead of cerebral power. It could grab, hold, pull, or push, like some sort of ethereal force under his absolute control. However, against someone as durable, strong, and heavy as Titanophyte, all these uses were rendered useless or ineffective. He couldn't push him as his strength and weight overwhelmed the aura's force output, he couldn't pull him either, not even mention grabbing and holding him back. The amount of aura points in it might have been high, but the type of attacks it could enforce was not ideal. Hence why he shifted to a more physical approach. With his strength increased by his 2000 aura, which was around a ton in strength, and all that blunt power focused into the single point that was his fists, which were comparatively small to Titanophyte's body, it was understandable why it had become a lot easier to pierce through the man's armor. Of course, if he had placed all his aura into strength, then he could have probably dealt even more easily with the guy. However, with the other two villains around, he didn't dare take too much aura from defense, and AP was still useful in case he needed some long-range mid-fight. So he settled for 2000 aura in strength, which, as seen now, worked wonders. All that rested now was to beat him to the ground. Taka's eyes narrowed, and he took a step towards Titanophyte, who backed off instantly. His earlier intimidating and stoic attitude completely cracking. Stay away. His opponent was utterly panicked. Which makes it even easier. Taka smiled, and, without warning, kicked off, winding another fist. But just as he was about to reach him, crackle! A lightning bolt shot at him. In the next instant, said bolt transformed into a human form and revealed Electraction, whipping a powerful and electrically charged kick in his direction. While Taka's body may have been too slow to respond, his mind wasn't. Status page. Filled right pointing small triangle strength, 2221 right pointing arrow 200. Filled right pointing small triangle defense, 2221 right pointing arrow 4242. Filled right pointing small triangle aura projection, 499. Inimmovable object, activated. The kick connected cleanly, an explosion of electricity going off on his body the next second, almost as if lightning had descended on him. Smoke burst from Taka, his costume clearly more charred now. But as the smoke cleared, his unaffected eyes showed to everyone. What the heck? Electraction groaned as she jumped away to make distance. Taka was about to lift his hand to command his aura, but then. Bang! The distant sound of a gun echoed, and soon, another bullet struck him on the head. The impact sounded clean, but the bullet still ended up bouncing off harmlessly. By then, however, Electraction had returned to Titanophyte's side, looking vexed at the now ominous figure standing before them. A man in tatters, surrounded by the smoke of his own clothes, but that no matter what, never received any damage. Just what kind of monster was this vigilante? No. She shook her head, refusing to believe that someone could just be invulnerable. Oi, snap out of it. She punched Titanophyte, who looked the most shaken between the two, snapping him out of his trance. Don't let him trick you, retard. There's nothing invincible in this world. I'm sure damage must be accumulating, even if he doesn't show it. He blocked a sharpened strike of mine with his finger, and it doesn't even have a droplet of blood in it after that. How can you say we are inflicting damage? Titanophyte snapped at her, growling. I don't know, but this ain't the time to be crying like a bitch. She gritted her teeth, eyes darting back to Taka, who stood impassively before them. We might be getting bodied one-on-one, but we can overwhelm him working together. He can't hold you with your strength, and he can't react to my attacks. If we continue, we should be able to breach his defenses eventually. And if we don't? Titanophyte asked, looking unsure at the man in the dark in front. Electraction snorted, electricity already flaring around her again. Then this was a lost cause from the beginning. But we won't know that unless we try. Titanophyte frowned at her words and glanced at the cracks in the stones around his chest and forearm. Very well. Then, with a dissatisfied huff, the rocks around him sharpened again, giving him that dangerous appearance from earlier, and he prepared to charge. Taka, on the other hand, opened his arms welcomingly. Come. And so, the two jumped into action. Orya. Electraction was the first to reach Taka, performing an elbow strike that sent yet another discharge on the youth's body. But Taka didn't seem to care and simply lifted his hand, shooting a burst of aura to capture her. But before it could get her fully, a huge shadow descended on him. Raaaah. Swish. 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 Titanophyte, now with both hands turned into spikes, stabbed at Taka multiple times. Like a Gatling gun of piercing jabs. Taka blocked the first barrage with his forearm, but soon they became too fast and too many to block, making him receive the full barrage on his chest. While that happened, Electraction circled around him before delivering a swift kick to Taka's back, discharging some more electricity. He tried to grab her, but she then turned into a lightning bolt and circled him yet again, appearing above and hitting a knee strike right onto Taka's face. Bang! At the same time, a bullet hit his ribs. Bang! 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 No, not one, many bullets began raining on him. All while Titanophyte's onslaught continued, and Electraction hit and ran constantly. Ultimately, though, their stamina wasn't endless. After a while, the two in the front line ran out of fumes, and Reaper's sight must have run out of bullets, or was recharging, because the attack barrage came to a halt, and both villains in the front retreated, catching their breath. Did you have enough, freak? Electraction yelled, frustrated, amidst gasps. But then, much to their growing vexation. Pat, pat, pat. Taka simply patted his clothes, as if brushing off dust. Then, his eyes glared at them with disdain. Is that all? Quote. Exclamation mark quote. Quote. Exclamation mark quote. In an instant, the exhaustion that was beginning to dull their fury reignited. Their eyes sharpened, blazing with renewed rage. And so, the fight resumed. Thud, 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 thud. Titanophyte's charge shook the earth, each step cracking the concrete further. Crackle. Electricity erupted around Electraction, escalating from the level of a faulty power line's spark to the chaotic overload of a collapsing city grid, and then, she shot forward like a lightning bolt. Then came the bullets. Bang, bang, bang. Electraction and the hail of shots reached him simultaneously. Catchin. Cling. Go down already. Crackle. Bullets ricocheted violently off Taka's body, and Electraction's electric discharge detonated against him, only for him to stand there, unbothered. Electraction's teeth ground against each other, but her frustration was interrupted when she saw Taka lifting his hand to capture her once again. But yet again, before he could do so, Titanophyte forced his attention away from her. Raw. With a thunderous roar, another barrage of heavy, stabbing blows crashed toward Taka. He blocked what he could with his palms, but several still hammered into him. Meanwhile, Electraction had already turned into a lightning bolt, spiraling around him in search of an opening. And then, to her delight, Taka finally shifted from defense, pulling back a fist to strike Titanophyte. She quickly transformed back into her human form and sent a swift kick into Taka's ribs. Or that's what should have happened. What? Before her charged kick could connect, her whole body froze midair, the feeling too familiar to mistake. Taka had captured her. Impossible. You didn't even point your hand at me like earlier. She shouted, struggling, and failing spectacularly, to move. Titanophyte noticed her predicament and immediately intensified his barrage, hoping to knock Taka off balance and free her. But he didn't. Taka's eyes narrowed, his gaze cold as it locked onto Electraction. That was just me playing around. Even as Titanophyte's onslaught continued, Electraction began to rise, slowly at first, then steadily floating higher. Bang! 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 Bullets rained down along with Titanophyte's stabbing strikes, but none of it stopped her ascent. She only kept rising, until she reached the top height. Let me go. No can do, Taka muttered, closing his eyes. Then. Status page. Filled right pointing small triangle strength, 200. Filled right pointing small triangle defense, 4242 right pointing arrow 3242. Filled right pointing small triangle aura projection, 499 right pointing arrow 1499. Inimmovable object activated. She plummeted. Bam! Her body slammed into the street, back arched, eyes rolling back instantly. Quote. Exclamation mark quote. Titanophyte's eyes widened, his assault faltering for a moment. Then, seeing his partner's limp form fly past him as Taka flung her away from the area, he cursed under his breath and broke off to catch her before she hit anything else. With Titanophyte momentarily out of the fight, Taka summoned a field of aura around himself. The bullets slowed drastically the moment they hit their boundary, losing all momentum. Thus, finally earning himself a moment of respite. Taka closed his eyes. Fuck. His body was aching like hell. The villainess had been right. He might be looking fine outside, but he was not really. With all three villains cooperating, he'd been forced into an entirely defensive stance. If he moved even a sliver of his aura away from defense, he risked getting seriously injured. So he couldn't hit back and couldn't use aura projection for anything meaningful. And with his defense pumped to absurd levels, the damage was still stacking. He'd activated Inimmovable Object because he realized its effect, spreading incoming damage throughout his whole body, helped soften certain attacks. Like Titanophyte's piercing blows. Under normal circumstances, those strikes would pierce straight through. But by distributing the force evenly, the piercing effect was lost, at the cost of taking a bit more overall damage, but which could also be reduced more easily with his defense stat than a piercing attack would. Same with the bullets. And with his defense on such great heights, he'd been tanking everything like a champ. But tanking isn't nullifying. The damage kept piling up. What started as mild discomfort had become sharp, jarring pain radiating across his entire body. Good thing he had that pain-resisting skill. And honestly, it would have been far worse if he hadn't managed to bait Electraction into overcommitting so he could use his AP on her and finally land a solid blow. Her electricity damaged his whole body regardless of Immovable Object being activated or not, which meant the damage could only be reduced by his defense stat. But with her gone, his job had gotten way easier. Now, only two villains remained, unless she woke up, which Taka hoped she wouldn't. The Rocky guy can be dealt with strength, but as for the other, Taka frowned, glaring around, unsure of Reaper Sight's location. The bullets weren't the main threat, annoying, sure, but manageable. The real problem was the guy's quirk. The bastard could teleport away the moment Taka got close, meaning he'd stay an annoyance for the entire fight, until he dealt with the Rocky villain. So, what could he do? A clone, maybe. If one could keep the sniper busy, that'd solve it. But thinking it through, Taka grimaced. Wasting aura on a clone right now was a terrible idea. He needed every aura point at his disposal. He couldn't afford to make a clone, at least not one with enough power to make a difference in this fight. So what the heck do I do? How was he supposed to get rid of that guy? Your uncreative host, uncreative, uncreative. The system's words earlier in the fight echoed in his mind. Whether it was an actual memory or just the system replaying it for him, he wasn't sure. Whatever it was, he focused on finding the answer to what they meant. Where was he lacking creativity, exactly? He'd already been pretty creative with immovable object. His other skills. They were practically built for aura farming, not combat utility. None functioned like a long-range attack either. So what the hell did the system want him to be creative with? His stats. Taka frowned. Strength. Defense. How would getting creative with either help him deal with a guy who could teleport around constantly? So that left aura projection. But what could it do? The sniper was too far for him to drag in, and even if he got close, the guy would just teleport again. His range wasn't wide enough to catch him pre or post teleport. What was he supposed to do against that with just a pseudo-telekinesis, exactly? Hold on. Pseudo-telekinesis. Taka's eyebrows lifted. That didn't sound quite right. Aura projection, the name didn't suggest telekinesis at all. It suggested using his aura, turning it from a simple stat booster into something that could interact with the world. Thus, projecting his aura, duh. So why did he automatically assume it was just telekinesis? And if it really wasn't just that, was there something else he could do with it? His closed eyes furrowed. What was aura, really? According to the system, it was energy generated from other people's awe toward him. Energy. Aura was energy. One with multiple purposes. It could boost his physique. It gained odd functions through skills like clean or his cloning ability. It could move things around him. So why couldn't it do more than push and pull? It was energy. And when you talked about energy, could it be? A small smirk curved under his mask as his eyes opened with newfound resolve. Status page. Filled right pointing small triangle strength, 200. Filled right pointing small triangle defense, 3242 right pointing arrow 2242. Filled right pointing small triangle aura projection, 1499 right pointing arrow 2499. Inimmovable object activated. His body lifted off the ground, floating higher and higher until he had a clear vantage point over every rooftop where the sniper could be hiding. Titanophyte remained below, choosing not to jump. He wasn't about to enter a situation where he was vulnerable to Taka's telekinesis. With the ground threat effectively stalled, Taka waited, eyes closing as he focused. Soon, the sound he'd been anticipating arrived. Bang! Another shot. The bullet pinged off harmlessly a moment later. But that was all Taka needed. His eyes snapped open, locking onto the source. There you are. He raised a hand. Bees. With a buzzing noise, a sphere of pure light was generated on his palm. Heat radiating from it, growing hotter and hotter until. Whoosh! The light erupted into a blazing ray, shooting toward the sniper at blistering speed. Exclamation mark quote. Having seen Taka gathering energy in his palm from the beginning, Reaper's instincts flared, and he managed to teleport away at the last possible second. As for the spot he'd been standing, TSSS's. A clean, molten hole burned through the rooftop, and concrete liquefied around the edges. Taka stared at it in stunned silence. Then, to his satisfaction. Less than new skill gained. Greater than. Aura projection pew pew mode. Description. Through sheer creativity, you realized your aura's potential is far from limited. And let's be honest, what's cooler than shooting lasers from your hands? Nothing. Is there anything else to be said? Filled right pointing small triangle. You can now condense AP points into pure destructive energy. The more AP spent, the stronger the blast. Filled right pointing small triangle. Spent AP deducts from your total AP and regenerates over time. Filled right pointing small triangle. The more you fire, the longer it takes to recover 50 aura per second. Filled right pointing small triangle. You are now authorized to shout Kamehameha. Taka blinked. So this was it. Thinking back, yeah, he had definitely been uncreative. Ha ha ha, he laughed under his mask, smirk widening. Now, this is good. Now he could finally end this fight. To be continued. I hope I was clear on why inimmovable object reduces the damage Taka receives in some cases. I'll explain it here just in case. Piercing attacks like Titanophyte's spiked jabs deal higher damage through Taka's defenses thanks to the smaller focus points. Think of it like an attack with armor penetration. Taka's defense stat doesn't block as much as it would with a blunt attack, for example. But with immovable object, the piercing in Titanophyte's jabs is nullified as the energy behind the attack is spread through Taka's whole body instead of focusing on one point and piercing. Hence, taking away the attack's armor penetration effect and making it a normal attack that Taka's defense stat can reduce normally, even if the attack's damage value goes a bit higher, thanks to the skill's effect of increasing incoming damage. In LOL terms, the skill makes true damage become physical damage, which allows for armor to reduce it. Maybe I just made it overly complicated. But either way, I hope you understood. And I hope you liked the chapter. Either way, until the next chapter. 35 comments 0 vote. The Guardian. The Guardian. Comma. Boring, Seiji grumbled as he flipped channels, sprawled lazily across the sofa. 1 channel. 2. 4. 9. His rapid-fire channel surfing continued without pause, his bored expression never shifting. As he did, his eyes drifted toward the front door, one eyebrow creeping up. That kid, it's getting late. Why is he still out? Don't tell me he went to do another one of his shows. He frowned, thumb shifting over the remote. Better check the local news and see if that brat is at it again. He punched in the channel number. After a moment, the familiar intro of Shizuoka News came up. However, instead of anything exciting, they were covering the usual fluff. Small-time villains getting arrested, comedic clips, city events or celebrations, nothing out of the ordinary. It seemed Taka was actually not out there committing crimes, otherwise, there was no way a channel focused only on the city would ignore him. That kid, I wonder why I'm even allowing him to do such things. Every time he beats a villain, he lengthens his possible sentence if he gets caught. I'm such a shitty guardian, aren't I? Seiji's memories went back to the day he fought Rakunesis, or, as discovered and theorized later, a clone of him. Until then, all he'd had were mere suspicions about the vigilante's identity being Taka. The vigilante used a suspiciously similar guitar to the one he'd given Taka, wore identical clothes to the now edgy kid, and one appeared whenever the other was gone, at least until the clone matter, but that was after his fight, not before. The only reason he hadn't been sure of it was because the guitar he had given the kid had quite a common design amongst other guitars, and because he'd never seen Taka outright using the same outfit of the vigilante when appearing in front of him. Always wearing a piece less or different. Albeit nothing said that Taka didn't just change outside the house to fool him. He tended to go out with a backpack most of the time, so he could easily have carried extra clothes inside there. But after that fight, his suspicions were basically confirmed. Similar voice, even if sounding a bit off, pretty much the same height and contexture, same fighting stance he taught him, same edginess and sassiness. The vigilante was indeed Taka. Which came with quite a shock. He'd believed Taka's quirk converted his physical force into some telekinesis. But Rakunesis' display of power was enormously higher than what Taka had shown at the examination months ago. Unless the exchange was exponential, there was no way the growth Taka had undergone in their training would have made him so strong. Not to mention the fact that now Rakunesis had a cloning ability, which literally had zero connection with Taka's supposed quirk. So, either he was being paranoid and Rakunesis was actually not Taka, or Taka had lied about his quirk. But given all the coincidences and Taka's rather bad acting skills, it seemed that he had indeed lied about his quirk. So what the hell was it even? Too troublesome. Seiji shook his head, not feeling like bothering with it. For now, the two things he had shown, telekinesis and cloning abilities, seemed a bit too far apart to reach a conclusion. All that was left was to wait for internet addicts to make their theories and do the job for him. But talking about jobs, and going back to what he had asked himself earlier. Why the heck do I let him do all that? Seiji wondered, staring at the TV with a puzzled expression. He was Taka's guardian. His job was to protect the kid, to keep him from doing reckless, dangerous things. And yet, he never stopped him. Of course, he had tried at first. When he was deployed to deal with Rakunesis and realized mid-fight that the vigilante was actually his ward, he'd tried to suppress him before the boy could get himself into even deeper trouble. But everything changed after he discovered Taka could clone himself. Whatever his quirk was, it was clearly far more complex than simple telekinesis. That had given Seiji enough justification to look the other way, even though the kid was breaking the law by fighting villains. If Taka could just send clones to do the dirty work, then there wasn't any real danger, right? Sure, the legality was another matter, but if Seiji was honest. He liked seeing the kid like that. Taka had been ostracized for being quirkless. He'd given up on becoming a hero earlier than most kids even learn what a quirk is supposed to do. That left him with little to talk about, few friends, and fewer dreams. As his guardian, it had been a painful sight, one Seiji never really found the right fix for. Without a quirk, the kid had just grown hopeless. All he could do was cheer him up when possible. But now he was out there, fighting villains with a confidence and ease that even surprised him. Seiji would bet anything the kid was grinning like an idiot behind that mask whenever he appeared. It was a good look for him, far better than the hopelessness he'd carried for years. Maybe that's why Seiji let him keep doing this. Maybe that's why he kept pretending he didn't notice. And honestly, the kid really was strong. Way stronger than he let on during their training sessions, judging by how he handled his fights against villains. And yet, in their spars, the kid always lost. Never using his telekinesis or whatever that quirk was, even though he could very well beat Seiji with it. Was he trying to defeat him with nothing but skill? That was actually kind of cool. Seiji snorted at the thought and casually glanced at his wristwatch. Still, that doesn't explain why the heck he's out so late. His eyes narrowed suspiciously. Don't tell me that kid finally got a chan. Quote. Quote. His speculation was cut off by an ominous chime. The words breaking news flashed across the screen. A deadpan spread across Seiji's face. Don't tell me. We are getting word that, right at this moment, Rakunesis is engaged in a fearsome fight with 3 villains. Of course he is. Wait, what? Seiji shot to his feet so fast the sofa bounced. He leaned close to the screen, eyes widening. 3 villains. That was too much. He'd fought 3 heroes at once before, sure, but heroes never went for the kill. Villains were different. They had no such qualms. Shit, well, Taka's pretty strong as Rakunesis. He should be able to hold out against some no-name villains until a hero arrives, or until I get there myself. He calmed himself, rubbing his temple and wondering if she should go grab his suit. The TV's next words left him speechless, however. The conflict is currently taking place in the Western District. We don't yet know what triggered this clash between the infamous vigilante and the 3 villains. However, police have reported minor crimes erupting all over the city, an operation previously identified in an investigation as a coordinated diversion, allowing these 3 confirmed A-class villains free rein to carry out their plans. A-class villains. Seiji's pupils shrank to pinpricks. A-class villains, those were the kind of criminals whose very existence endangered entire city blocks. The kind normal heroes struggled with. The kind that usually required multiple high-ranking heroes working together just to take down. He'd fought a few in his active years. None of those battles had been easy. And Taka was fighting 3 of them at once. He didn't even want to imagine the outcome. He grabbed his phone and dialed immediately. After several rings, someone finally picked up. What do you want, Super Monkey? Isn't today your off day? I'm extremely busy, don't you see the news? Oi, what the hell are the other heroes doing? I mean, that vigilante guy is fighting 3 damn A-class villains by himself. Why hasn't anyone been deployed? We're aware of the situation. We were aware of the villains even before this escalated. But all our preparations were for intercepting them at the bank they planned to hit. Since the vigilante exposed them early, we're scrambling to mobilize as fast as possible. Shit. And why hasn't any hero nearby stepped in? There are none. The entire city has fallen into small-scale pandemonium. Minor crimes are breaking out everywhere, and they've pulled all available heroes away. Seiji ran a hand through his hair in frustration, eyes flicking back to the TV. There, the screen showed Taka being hammered by dozens of attacks from the trio of villains. Crap. He clicked his tongue and brought the phone back to his ear. I'm going personally. Sigh, alright. I'll notify the higher UPS. Click. With that done, he hung up. Seiji immediately began searching for his suit, only to end up taking way longer than he expected. Where is my super suit? He tore through every corner of the house, frustration growing by the second, until suddenly, he froze. It's in the washing machine. Shit. Cursing under his breath, Seiji sprinted to his room and threw on a simple tracksuit, one that conveniently had a hole in the back for his tail. I'll just go like this, he muttered, grabbing for his keys in a hurry. What's this? Rakunesis is showing a new power. Huh. Only to stop dead when the TV's narrator suddenly raised his voice. Seiji's head snapped toward the screen, confusion plastered across his face. On the TV, Taka floated high into the sky. What? He's just flying. How's that new? His thought cut off abruptly as Taka lifted his arm. Quote. Question mark exclamation mark quote. And a beam of pure, blinding light blasted from his palm, streaking straight toward one of the villains, who only avoided being vaporized by teleporting at the last second. The beam ended up simply hitting the ceiling of the building, but even then, it melted a hole into the concrete, like it was mere butter. After that, a brief pause came, where Taka himself seemed briefly surprised by the new ability he'd unleashed. But once the surprise was gone, the villain's break ended. A barrage of beams rained down on the villain. One after another, light shot from Taka's palm like divine artillery. The sniper teleported desperately, leaping from rooftop to rooftop, narrowly avoiding each beam by a hair's breadth. His eyes didn't have time to look for distant places, the lights were coming at such speed that he had to teleport to the first place that was in sight. And so far, he was managing to avoid being turned into ashes like that. But it was clear he was weakening with each teleport. His posture sagged more with every jump. His landings grew sloppy, sweat poured from him like a cascade, and his legs trembled harder each time he reappeared somewhere else. Until, finally, after the 30th beam, he couldn't keep up. A beam struck him. Quote. Exclamation mark quote. Seiji's eyes widened. Crap. Had Taka actually crossed the line? With an attack like that, there was no way. But before he could finish that thought, the camera zoomed in, revealing the villain alive, panting on his knees, inspecting himself as if shocked to still exist. Not a scratch on him. Seiji exhaled. It was a fake. That's when Taka descended, arms crossed and legs floating leisurely beneath him, backlit by a beam of sunlight as he stared down at the defeated villain. The next instant, the gun the villain had been using to shoot crumpled like paper before being tossed away like trash, far from the villain's reach. It was an imposing scene. Even the villain seemed to have thought so, as soon he shut his eyes and slumped his head in surrender while still on his knees. He had given up on escaping. But then, the camera suddenly jerked. A shadow streaked from below, rising like a rocket. Right away, it became clear who it was. Titanophyte, one of the three villains who had been fighting Taka earlier. He launched himself like a missile toward Taka, his rocky form reconfiguring midair, sharpening into a massive spear-like horn twice his size. The intent was clear: impale the teenager straight through. But Taka was no unaware target. Before the giant could even blink, Taka turned lazily and pointed a hand at him. Instantly, Titanophyte's incredible momentum bled away, slowing, until he hung suspended in midair, helpless. And with a single, effortless motion, Taka slammed the two villains together. Reaper Sight, being a normal human physically, took the brunt of it and went limp instantly. Taka flicked a hand, sending the unconscious body plummeting to the ground below. Only Titanophyte remained, struggling, twitching, frozen in place. Taka floated toward him, the two facing each other in midair. Then, with one decisive downward gesture, Titanophyte was hurled earthward like a meteor. The camera shook violently as the villain crashed into the street. A massive dust cloud erupted, swallowing the scene. Through the haze, Taka began descending calmly, hands tucked casually in his pockets. When the dust cleared, Titanophyte was forcing himself up, glaring daggers at his opponent. His breathing was ragged, but his fury burned bright. Then, he noticed not his companions lying just a few steps away from him, one to the right, and the other to the left, even though they shouldn't have been there, having been defeated in completely different places earlier. So why were they there? It instantly clicked in his mind. The man in black was preparing a scene in which the three lay defeated on the ground orderly, while he stood victorious before them. He was using them to look cool. With a feral scowl, the giant took another fighting stance, his rocky armor sharpening to its absolute limit. As he did, Taka finally landed, hitting the street, and then, seeing Titanophyte's readiness, he too readied himself. He rolled up his sleeves and waved his hand as if beckoning Titanophyte to come. That was enough to spark the droplet of conflict into a full blaze. Titanophyte launched into his strongest, and likely final, charge of the fight, his massive frame thundering forward like an unstoppable train. The ground split beneath each step, cracks spider webbing outward. Taka moved as well. No telekinesis this time and no flatting. Just a full sprint, fists clenched and muscles ready. And then, they collided. The clash was brief. With ruthless precision, Taka punched straight through Titanophyte's rock armor using nothing but raw, unrestrained strength far beyond anything he'd shown earlier. Titanophyte clearly possessed the higher physical power on paper, yet Taka's sheer resilience ignored it entirely. Blow after blow, the only one taking real damage, was the villain. Within minutes, Titanophyte's armor shattered completely, every rocky plate on his front obliterated. His body finally gave out, collapsing backward with his eyes rolling up, landing right between the already unconscious Electraction and Reaper sight. Just like that, the trio of A-class villains fell. And Taka, realizing his victory, raised a fist to the sky. The helicopter camera caught him perfectly, sunlight breaking through the clouds at that precise moment, casting a radiant beam over his form. The image was nothing short of dazzling. And then, in an instant, Taka took flight, faster than the camera could follow, disappearing into the sky. Like that, Seiji collapsed on his couch once again, his mouth twitching. Haha, that kid, he's even more of a monster than I thought, huh. He ran a hand through his hair, letting the unease from before disperse, and even laughing humorously at the unbelievable situation. I might be the guardian of a future #1 hero. Comma. To be continued. There, I was wondering about whether to do another chapter of Taka's fight with the villains, but honestly, I felt like I could just cover it from a spectator's point of view as it's more epic that way. And since I was lacking a chapter delving into Seiji's mind, here it is. What did you think? Was it good? Or did I screw up the guy? Also, sad news for all of you, we've reached the limit of the chapters I had stacked up, so daily updates will hardly happen from now on. Chain reaction. Taka's POV, after the battle. Comma. I arrived home completely demolished. My whole body hurt like hell, and when I say my entire body, I'm not being metaphorical or exaggerating. I could feel pain from the top of my head to the tips of my toes. There wasn't a single inch that didn't hurt. Well, maybe a part was safe, but I won't talk about it. Doubt you want to hear about it either. Is this the price of abusing an immovable object? I mused, staring annoyedly up at the sky. Sure, it kept me from being skewered by Rocky McHorn for a head, but in exchange, every ounce of force behind his attacks got redistributed straight through my whole body. And even with my defense stats soaking up most of the damage, I still took plenty of hits, enough that it eventually piled up to an annoying degree. I really wondered what kind of disaster my insides looked like right now. It hurt a lot, but I don't think anything had collapsed, maybe. Still, with the help of pain resistance and my very professional acting skills, I straightened up, fixed my expression, and opened the door with my keys. I had to look like nothing happened. Click. Well. Look who it is. Quote. But to my surprise, Seiji was right behind the door, arms planted on his waist like he'd just caught a criminal in the act. My eyebrow twitched faintly. This guy probably already knew of my little adventure. Sadly for him, I wasn't about to be caught lacking. So, I narrowed my eyes, refusing to fold. What's up, bitch? He raised one eyebrow and began looking me over. Of course, I'd already changed clothes. The outfit I'd worn to fight the villains, the one I usually used when taking on the Rakunesis persona, was at the abandoned school. I decided to keep it there to avoid getting this dumbass stumble upon it on the washing machine or something and make the connection. That way, I could go outside, change at that school, and then go save the world as Rakunesis. Or had a clone do it for me. That worked too. Honestly, that place had kind of become my secret base. It was where I sent clones to train in whatever skill my system asked me to master, where I kept the equipment and instruments I'd bought with my channel's money so Seiji wouldn't ask, and, as mentioned, where I kept my Rakunesis fit. I might as well just start calling it the Rakabase. Comma. Is that name Lame? I've been called that for so long that I can't tell anymore, my thoughts drifted. Meanwhile, Seiji kept inspecting me, frowning slightly when he didn't find a single visible injury. Which was a relief. I was half worried I would be looking like an eggplant thanks to bleeding internally all over without even knowing it. It didn't seem like that was the case, luckily. It still hurt like hell, though. By the time I refocused, Seiji stepped back and scoffed, a faintly amused look on his face. Seriously, what the hell, he muttered, moving aside so I could enter. Finally, I can't wait to drop dead on my bed. I let out a soft breath and stepped forward. Only for a big hand to clamp down on my shoulder. What now? I shot him an annoyed glare. So, he said casually, where were you? It's pretty late. I shrugged, putting on my most innocent face. You know, jogging, exploring the city a bit, the usual. He hummed like he totally believed that. I see. Did you know that Rakunesis guy fought 3 A-class villains an hour or so ago? It was all over the news. I raised an eyebrow. The press was watching. Ah, right. The helicopter. I was so focused on beating the hell out of the villains that I tuned it out. My gaze drifted to my hands. Then I guess that is out of the bag too. I thought, remembering the glow that came from them earlier. And apparently, Seiji continued, the guy even revealed another new power he'd never shown before. Laser rays and everything. Yup, busted. I groaned internally. Externally though. Hey, what a shock, I exclaimed in mock awe. Yeah, what a shock indeed. His smile tightened. We fell silent for a moment, eyes clashing like trying the other to crack first. But eventually, I closed my eyes and scoffed. Then, assuming that the silence had meant the interrogation or whatever this had been was over, I began walking toward my room, ready to collapse face first onto my bed. Hey, kid. Of course, it wasn't over just yet. What? I turned back, irritation finally slipping through. I don't care what hobbies you might have, he said quietly, but just consider that everything has consequences. Don't fool yourself into thinking secrets last forever, or that you'll never have to face what comes after. He said, his expression unusually serious for him. Quote. I blinked, a tad surprised with his directness. Once he said that, however, his smile returned to being as goofy as ever. That's all the advice I can give you. Think it through. Now go, I can see that you're dying to go bust one at your room. Whatever. I was about to tell him my mind, but found it not worth the effort. So, with black lines on my face, I turned around and walked to my room. A bit later, I finally fell onto my bed, letting out a groan as I was finally able to let my very manly muscles rest. Consequences, huh? I closed my eyes, thinking about it. As much as I hated to admit it, he wasn't wrong. Leaving aside whatever he meant by that, probably getting caught by police or heroes raiding this place, the fact was that I was showing way too many abilities with no clear relation to each other was obviously gonna become a problem in the long run. I was basically painting a giant target on my back for the real monsters of this world to see. And not only had I shown a bunch of different powers, but I had also defeated 3 A-class villains, according to Seiji. That meant anyone who had dismissed me as some random vigilante with a bit of power and a curious quirk had definitely reconsidered. Honestly, I'd be quite lucky if I hadn't caught Potato Head's attention by now. Although, maybe I'm overestimating my fame. While in this city I'm kind of well known, I'm not sure how wide that fame actually spreads. Maybe in all of Japan, I'm nothing more than a curious fact in a Quirktuber's video about the tourist attractions of this city. Or someone people just heard on the news one time and then became forgotten. And as for the rest of the world, I bet barely anyone knows I exist. Then again, maybe I'm downplaying how urgent this situation really is. But honestly, I'm not in the state to think about it right now. I groaned. As much as I wanted to take this seriously, the pain I was feeling was no joke. I needed to take a nap and recover, now. So, as a final ritual before sleep, I opened my status panel. Status page. Filled right pointing small triangle strength, 119. Filled right pointing small triangle defense, 238. Filled right pointing small triangle aura projection, 5765. Total aura, 5765. Skills. Filled right pointing small triangle clean. Filled right pointing small triangle trouble radar. Filled right pointing small triangle connoisseur. Filled right pointing small triangle pain is just a feeling. Filled right pointing small triangle immovable object. Filled right pointing small triangle true speaking. Filled right pointing small triangle true breathing. Filled right pointing small triangle true walking. Filled right pointing small triangle good job beating me, but that was merely a clone. Filled right pointing small triangle efficient body. Filled right pointing small triangle aura projection pew pew mode. An hour had passed already, so the aura my clones had used was back. On top of that, I gained a bunch of aura throughout the fight thanks to all that nonchalant attack tanking I did, bumping my total up by 400 something. Less than +1 aura greater than. Less than +2 aura greater than. Not only that, but my passive income had shot up even more. I wasn't sure by how much, since the increase only happened after the fight and I haven't had time to measure, but it was noticeably faster. Last time I'd checked, it was about 35 to 40 a day. Now, it felt like a 30 to 50% boost. So maybe around 60 a day. I'll just check later. It'll probably go down once the news about me beating those villains gets old, I thought, deciding it wasn't worth dealing with now. So my eyes moved to the next important thing, my new skill, or rather, the new application of aura projection. Sure, Shooting lasers from my palms was cool, but that wasn't why this mattered so much to me right now. The real importance was the confirmation of the stat's potential. It actually wasn't, and had never been, just telekinesis by another name. It could have more uses, more abilities, more depth than I had considered initially. And I probably haven't even scratched the surface, I thought, eyes glinting with interest as I imagined just what other uses my aura could have, my hand automatically going to my chin in contemplation. But right then, the movement sent a jolt of pain through me, making me wince. Hiss. Shit, I wonder if it can heal injuries too. Less than new mission available. Greater than. Huh. As an aura farmer, it is in our nature to overwhelm and oppress our rivals in the most disrespectful ways, and to flex our awesomeness no matter the cost. However, the path of the aura farmer does not end there, for one can destroy as well as protect. You have discovered the destructive potential of aura projection, but have yet to tap into its opposite, its protective and healing potential. Plus, you're injured as hell, so this will come in handy. Conditions for completion. Filled right pointing small triangle tap into your aura's other potential. Filled right pointing small triangle heal someone. Not counting yourself. Reward. Plus 100 aura, you'll have acquired the aura projection, their mode. Quote. I fell silent at how conveniently that appeared. But I guess this was just the system's way of confirming my theory and giving me something else to work on. Whatever. I frowned. Mostly because part of me was annoyed that yet another task had been added to my already busy enough schedule. But don't think I wasn't happy about the news. Healing in the real world was, after all, pretty broken. And now, it was within my grasp. Only, the conditions don't really tell me much about how to tap into this potential of my aura. So I suppose I'll have to figure it out on my own. Good thing I have clones, I'll be sure to put those bastards to work on it as soon as I can. Does that count as child labor, considering I'm a teenager? Who knows? But for now, snore. I'm going to sleep. Tomorrow me can deal with all of this, and whatever else pops up. How worse can it be than now? Degree. UA's principal office. Quote. Well, isn't this interesting? Nezu muttered to himself as he watched the most recent news on the notepad on his paws, his eyes scanning the footage of an incident in the coastal city of Shizuoka. On the screen, a dark-clad figure was fighting 3 villains at once, taking blow after blow without so much as flinching. Impressive resistance to attacks, possibly shock absorption, or something similar. Then came an unexpected shift. Thanks to one villain's mistake, the vigilante managed to bring her down using swift, telekinetic-like movements. Thus, reducing their numbers and hence all the attacks he had to react to. The capability to affect objects from afar with considerable force, telekinesis, or at least something really similar. Moments later, he shot into the air and began raining down lasers from his hands onto the long-range villain. The beams showed remarkable firepower, enough to incapacitate if they hit properly, as shown when they hit a building's ceiling and burned a hole through it. But when one finally reached the villain, the man emerged unharmed somehow. Energy manifestation. Either it only damages inanimate targets, as it did when it tore through a building's ceiling but not on the villain, or he somehow lowered the lasers' energy output not to hurt the villain. After that, the vigilante dealt with said villain less lethally and then dove down to face the last villain for once and for all. The battle concluded as both clashed, the sheer difference in size making it a ridiculous but amazing spectacle. But, eventually, the vigilante overwhelmed the villain through sheer physical prowess, breaking through his rock-like armor and bringing him to his knees in the end. Immense strength, speed, and a faint grasp of martial arts from what I can see. The video ended with the figure raising a fist in victory before flying away, too fast for the camera to follow. As the footage cut off, Nezu set down his notepad with a cheerful smile. Truly interesting. He already had a solid idea of who the villains were, his memory was good like that, and in the past, he had made sure to get to know most of the individuals who could potentially present threats in the future. In this case, the 3 were dangerous A-class villains with powerful or extremely tricky quirks, which made them require multiple standard heroes to subdue, each, unless they sent top-tier powerhouses like All Might, Endeavor, or others. And yet, now, before his eyes, a single person had handled them. A vigilante, no less, not a trained hero. And so now came the matter of the vigilante himself. Nezu had become aware of him months ago, thanks to his rising reputation and steadily growing list of feats. He even had to admit, the two melodies the vigilante had composed were pleasantly catchy. But what truly stood out to the public were his quirks. What had first seemed like simple telekinesis slowly turned into a complete enigma. Cloning, super strength, enormous durability, an ability akin to shock absorption, and now pure energy projection, be it thermal, luminous, or both. The more time passed, the more abilities this individual displayed. And the more time passed, the more he went from petty criminal charged with vigilantism to a full-fledged powerhouse with multiple abilities. Why and how did he have such abilities? Nezu had several theories, some not so good, but neither of them was something concrete. Not yet. However, unlike the public, Nezu's interest lay in something more peculiar about the vigilante than in the multiple abilities he possessed. Something that would be far more common and unimportant in the eyes of others, but that, for him, the principal of a hero school, it was but the most interesting thing about this walking mystery. Something only he, with his sharp mind and attention to detail, could have possibly noticed from the footage. The vigilante's physique. He looked young. Or at least, that's what his contexture suggested. Nezu's eyes gleamed with mischievous delight. And he had a channel on YouTube, on top of that. He had been looking into it earlier due to pure curiosity, and he'd noticed the vigilante had taken some precautions to avoid being tracked. Uploading most stuff through cyber cafes, and probably using pendrives or other devices to transport the videos. Unfortunately, that was clearly not enough to stop him. With an amused and almost childish chuckle, Nezu hopped onto his desk and began using his computer. No more than 30 minutes later. Takahashi Fukumoto, Ward of Super Monkey, the 69th hero in the rankings, and a child previously documented as quirkless until recently, where he unlocked his quirk, muscle to mind, which allowed him to convert his physical strength into telekinetic abilities. Nezu's small, beady eyes glistened as he went through the information. Of course, he made sure not to touch the more private information about the kid. He just wanted to get a grasp of who the person behind the vigilante was. But then, he read something that he couldn't ignore, his eyebrows shooting up for a moment. Desired career plan, hero course at UA. He chuckled like a joyful kid. This incoming year suddenly became even more interesting. To be continued. The consequences have arrived. How will they unfold? Even I don't know. I suppose I gotta think now. I'm doing it, I'm thinking. My head. All out. Join my Patreon for more chapters, and you'll help me make ends meet while doing so. Patreon.com/thesynonym. All out. Rockabase, at the music classroom, a week later. Taka sat on a worn-out chair, his back slumping as his foot's heel tapped constantly on the floor, his eyes unusually interested in the floor. Phew, so the time has finally come, he muttered, pulling out his phone and checking on the date with squinty eyes. Then, he checked the hour. It was evening already, the darkness of the night already creeping in. Having checked that fact, Taka put his phone down and sighed dejectedly. However, just a second later, his gaze turned back forward, determination flashing from it. Tonight's the night, he said, this time louder. Whether to look cool or to encourage himself, it was unknown. As to why he would be encouraging himself, the answer was that today was the day he showed his song to the world. Today was the day his constant grinding and effort finally culminated in one result, success, or failure. Would the song he had taken 3 months preparing and refining be good enough? Would his attempt at leaving the art of plagiarizing work? Or would he realize that he should have never walked out of it? His eyes darted to the side, where all the instruments he had been using for practice these past few months were. A bass, a drum set, even an electric board. All of them represented weeks of effort and constant grinding that, while he himself did not go through, the memories of his clones basically made it as if he had done so. And it wasn't only practicing. Composing had been just as hard. He ended up modifying the entire song several times, fixing mistakes, improving parts, or simply changing his mind from time to time about certain parts, even while already being at the band practicing stage. That was why it had taken 3 months for this day to come. Otherwise, he would have been done a month or so ago. Albeit, with what would probably be a much inferior version of what his creation had become nowadays, at least, that's what Taka thought. Who knew how the masses would react, after all? If this actually flopped, then forget the aura loss he'd have to bear, the shit feeling he'd get would last for the entire next year, and would probably make him bury his Rockinesis persona 10 kilometers below the earth, never to mention it again. If it did not, however, today's gains of aura would be immaculate. Especially because of the special preparations he had taken in advance. He had made sure that today's gains would be maximized to the limit. While his excessive perfectionism may have had a lot to do with why the song's creation took 3 months, there was another factor that had led to today being the date when he struck. And that was the existence of a concert, or, actually, a bunch of them, in Tokyo. A musical festival, basically. No hero or villain shit involved this time. Yes. He was actually crashing a festival show to present his song. Illegally, if it wasn't clear enough. After all, he was currently a wanted vigilante. Attempting to inscribe legally would probably only get the police to come knocking, regardless of whether the organizers would allow him in there or not. This was a rather bold move, since it moved from morally ambiguous vigilantism, to outright intruding forcefully in a festival and taking the scenery hostage to play his song before dipping. This time, he was actually stepping into the path of a criminal, or a villain, in the words of the media. But if that's what it had to happen for him to present, then so be it. Today, he was going all out. Cringe or epic, the line blurred today. While he may feel a little sorry for causing trouble for the producers and organizers of this event, there was simply no better place he could think of where the presentation could be done. No other place had everything needed to make this song's debut the best it could be. Equipment, audience, acoustics, vibe, everything was perfect. Of course, he wasn't planning on just landing on the scenery and then rocking plainly. That'd be like serving a gourmet meal on a cardboard plate. He had actually meticulously planned this. Throughout the past month, he sent clones several times to the place to investigate and learn how to use the scenery's implements and lights, along with learning the place's schematics, so he could plan properly where and how to make his entrance. He also checked some tutorials online to complement. And since he was still feeling a bit sorry for just intruding like that, he also learned to some extent the schedule of all the bands and other events, so that he could make his entrance at the moment where he'd make the least problems for those involved. All in all, his plans were as thorough as he could have done them. The only way this would go wrong was if his song actually turned out to be shit, or if All Might appeared and punched him to oblivion. He wouldn't be there, would he? He could deal with the heroes that may be there as security. He had planned to station some of his clones as guards to hold them off while the song played, but if anyone like All Might stepped in, he was going to prison for certain. Of course, to avoid that, he could simply have his clones do the entire show while he stood amidst the crowd, safe and sound from any powerful hero that might be there. He could do that, but it didn't feel right. It had to be him who stood there. He was showing the results of his own effort to the world. Leaving it all to the clones while he stood aside, that didn't sound very Aura Farmer-like. Even if it was unnecessary, and maybe dumb, sometimes showing off was that. Sometimes, Aura farming was like that. Probably, Taka snorted wryly before glancing around. You agree with me, right, system? But even after several seconds had passed, no answer came. Taka raised an eyebrow, glancing around with an odd look. After a bit, though, he let out a snort and shook his head helplessly. Yeah, I suppose having doubts isn't very Aura Farmer-like. Heaving a sigh, Taka stretched for a bit his arms and back, and then stood up, his gaze now gaining a resolution unseen until then. Without further ado, he went to a nearby locker and took out his Rockinesis outfit. Black hoodie, black mask, and black pants. Edginess to the limit. A cape would have been good to have, but changing his street-like outfit to having a cape would have been too brusque a change. Maybe once he entered UA, he'd ask for a cape for his hero suit. But that was for the future. Having changed his clothes, Taka let out a nervous breath and walked to the center of the room. From his aura, suddenly several clones began materializing next to him, all of them wearing the same Rockinesis outfit. And then, out of nowhere, all of his clones took dramatic poses beside him, making him the only one standing normally. Taka's sweat dropped, turning to look at them, flabbergasted. Why were his clones like this? No matter. He sighed and shook his head wryly, already somewhat accustomed to his clones' antics. A neck crack and a shoulder loosening later, he glared ahead with determination. Alright, let's fucking do this. Swearing doesn't make you cool. One of his clones chimed in. The rest nodded in unison. Taka sighed. I know, just nervous. Another clone spoke, tilting his head slightly. By the way, why did you summon us? It's a 3-hour trip to Tokyo. Moving in tandem like this doesn't seem very efficient. Taka snorted. It was for the dramatic effect. Quote. His clones looked at him weirdly. And then, they disappeared. Ahem. Taka cleared his throat. It was time to move. Comma. Degree. 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 Hours later. Comma. A huge crowd stood before a stage, at least 1,000 people jumping, bobbing their heads, and singing along with the main band standing at the center of the show. The air around was thick and hot, but even then, it did not lessen the spirit of those enthusiasts of music, who rather than dislike it, seemed to revel in it along with the music. Their hearts drummed, and goosebumps flowed through their body, forcing them to move to release such energy. Their eyes getting teary as they stared at the people in the middle of the stage. But just like all in life, the song being played eventually began reaching its end, and in unison, the emotions of the crowd began dimming as well. A minute or so later, the song came to an end, and the band performing it gave the audience a deep bow before stepping off the stage while the crowd called for them and clapped feverishly. Simultaneously, the announcer stepped in and walked towards the mic, waving at the crowd. That was epic, wasn't it, everyone? Let's give the band, "I Just Ate a Banana," a big round applause. Cheers and applause from the crowd intensified, with some whistles adding onto them, flooding the entire place. The announcer nodded satisfiedly, laughing heartily. Ha ha ha, I can feel the love you guys have for this band in the air. Hopefully, this won't be the only time we are honored with their presence. The crowd cheered. After laughing a bit more, the announcer glanced fakely at his wrist as if he had a watch there, and turned back to the crowd. Anyway, folks, we'll be taking a small break. Go buy something or go take a break from all that jumping around so you can be fully recovered for when we come back with the next band. My shirt is itchy, in 10 minutes. Another cheer came. And with that, the announcer got off the stage. The crowd also started to disperse, with some people rubbing their bellies, wondering what they should eat, and others planning to go to the edges of the festival to lie down for a bit and recover. But just as they were beginning to leave for good, bang! Everyone got startled as all the lights in the area went off, summing the entire place into darkness. What's happening? A blackout? You've got to be kidding me. They better not cancel this. I spent more than half my salary on this. Confusion soon took over the entire mass of people, with many looking around to see if there was any staff that could tell them what the hell was happening, and some others already getting angry. But then, just as some of the crowd were starting to wonder if something bad might actually be happening. Bang! A single light turned on, aiming at an empty spot on the stage. Everyone turned confusedly to the scenery. The confirmation that a blackout had actually not happened created more questions than answers. Even more oddly, something seemed to be happening at the stage, judging from how a soul light had fallen at the center, as if highlighting someone who wasn't there. Was there a special event or something? Was someone important coming? The crowd only grew more restless as nothing happened. But then, the soul light on the stage began moving upwards, until it landed on the top of the stage, where half of the light was lost in the night sky, while the other half illuminated the beams that gave the scenery form. For a moment, everyone tilted their head. Was something actually malfunctioning? Nothing was there. But all confusion was turned to shock once, from high above in the sky, a figure descended, landing cleanly and elegantly on the beams with his arms crossed. What the hell? Who's that? Wasn't this a break? Why is the show restarting? Hold on, I know that guy. Soon, some of the crowd began noticing a certain familiarity in the figure. Black hoodie hiding the hair, black mask hiding the mouth, and black pants that only added to the edginess. There was only one person with a fit like that. Rockinesis. Why is that guy here? Rockinesis. That guy. In this place. Why would he? Don't tell me. Every single gaze centered around the same person, some annoyed, others excited. The emotions of the until then relaxed crowd began surging again, turning the entire place noisy again. But just when the chatter and noise seemed to be stabilizing, something happened that threw the entire vicinity into pure chaos. What's that? A man pointed to where Rockinesis was. Holy! A woman went agape. So it was true. A teenager beamed. Suddenly, several more figures began descending from the sky and landed next to Rockinesis. Same clothes, same stature, same constitution. What had been a single Rockinesis had turned into Rockinesises. IDK man. Then, to everyone's surprise, the group jumped down in tandem, a loud bang echoing as the group landed in the middle of the stage while the light followed after them. Only for them to, right as all eyes settled on them, pose dramatically. Save for the Rockinesis who had arrived first, and who stood at the front of the group now with his arms crossed. At least that was the case until all of them raised their hands into the air simultaneously. Instants later, instruments of all kinds flew in from all around. landing perfectly on their palms, or in the case of those heavier instruments, landing right in front of them. Thus, making it quite clear what was about to happen. Holy shit, a Rockanessus concert. I don't know why they didn't advertise this, but I'm all in. Wonder which song he'll play. Must be Animal I've Become. Nah, appearing at a concert like this, what else would it be but the first song he composed? It's gotta be Future in My Hands. Now improved and with more instruments. Why not both? The crowd went wild as the realization of what was about to happen dawned on them. Constant chatter, cheers, and whistles filled the vicinity. Meanwhile, the Rockanessus group remained at the center of the stage, unmoving, like statues, illuminated by a single light, until suddenly. Bang! All the lights turned on at the same time, blinding the crowd and making them cover their eyes. But as their sight became negated, their other senses heightened. Chakachan. Soon, the familiar riff of guitar that announced Rockanessus' arrival reached their ears, turning frowns into disbelieving smiles. And then, as their eyes regained their sight, they saw it. The group of Rockanessus, standing with the blinding lights hitting their back, their fronts shrouded in black. An image that would imprint in the minds of many that day. And so, as the hearts of the crowd began beating as one, the music began. To be continued. I'll be straightforward with you, I'm no musician, so I ain't going to write lyrics for a song that doesn't exist. That'd be corny beyond my limits. So, let's do it like this. You can imagine whatever song you like and think would be appropriate for the character to be playing, and lore-wise that song won't exist in Taka's old world, hence being his original creation. And in case you don't feel like it, I also chose a song on my own. Which? It's a very special song. So you can just imagine Taka playing that. The song. Ready your songs readers, or don't. Anyway, your author's choice was Specialz, in case you feel like hearing it too. As Taka's voice fell, the crowd, silent but brimming with anticipation, erupted all at once. The melody struck them instantly. The rhythm, the vocals, the arrangement, everything burrowed deep into the audience's chest in a single beat, dragging their emotions along with it. The visuals were not falling behind either. Red and blue lasers sliced through the air, sweeping across the stage and illuminating the silhouettes of the many Rockanesses, while a thick veil of theatrical smoke spread over the floor, giving the identical figures an almost otherworldly presence. Cheers and whistles came from the excited crowd, but the song overpowered all of them, and the audience didn't seem to mind in the slightest. They jumped, screamed, and even cried as their emotions overflowed. There were always those emotional ones who cried at concerts. The entire place was submerged in the performance so deeply that almost no one noticed what was happening at the sides of the stage. Hidden beneath the thunder of the music, frustrated shouts struggled to be heard. Damn it, has anyone made it up there to stop that guy? A hero in a blue and white suit yelled into his radio, trying not to be swallowed by the deafening song. A reply crackled back through the static. East side here. The path is completely blocked by a clone. We can't get through. Shit. How the hell can clones be enough to hold all of us back? A hero beside him groaned. This is getting depressing. Unwilling to give up, the first hero shoved the radio into his pocket and marched toward the stairs leading up to the stage. But before he could reach them, a figure silently appeared in his path. Rockanessus, a clone, presumably, floated calmly in midair, arms crossed, and legs dangling. It appeared in front of him, blocking his path completely. The hero clenched his teeth. Rockanessus, why you don't have permission to perform here? Actually, forget that, you're a wanted fugitive. Get out of the way and put an end to this farce. Quote. A second of silence passed, both of them clashing gazes, in a contest of will, until the black-clad figure suddenly lifted a hand. Quote. And wagged a single finger left and right. The hero's request, denied. Enough. The hero snapped, thrusting his hands upward. Pebbles, sharp, dense, and accelerated, shot up like a hailstorm toward the vigilante. Sadly, they all crumbled into dust before even reaching him. Wah! Then, in the blink of an eye, the hero was yanked off his feet, hoisted into the air like a misbehaving child by the telekinesis, and flown straight back to the cluster of other heroes before being unceremoniously dropped onto the ground. Seconds later, he scrambled back to his feet and groaned, rubbing his temples. Why is my quirk so pathetic? Before he could fully wallow, his radio buzzed again in his pocket. All heroes, be advised, you are not to stop Rockanessus. The hero snatched it up instantly. But Mr. Takeda, he is sending the crowd wild. Sure, he may have butted in forcefully on the stage and messed with the schedule, but this is incredible publicity for the event. You're kidding me. Besides, he's completely overwhelming all of you, isn't he? Just let him be. It's not like you could do anything anyway. The hero's posture slumped forward in defeat, looking on the verge of tears. Back on the stage, the many Rockinessizes kept playing in perfect coordination, each clone hitting their part with almost supernatural precision. But they didn't stop just at that. Before long, some of the clones started breakdancing while still playing, flexing so hard it bordered on showboating. But judging by the public's excited reaction, they sure didn't give a damn about the obvious flexing. Taka, meanwhile, sweat dropped from his spot at the front, standing normally while playing his part. You bunch are doing too much. He sent his clones a look. His clones looked back at him. We are doing everything. Fair enough. Taka sighed inwardly, eyes darting away. He had to admit, watching someone shred a piano, bass, or a drum set while spinning on their head was objectively impressive. Whatever, he muttered aloud. Then, in one smooth motion, he dropped down, braced his palms, and began spinning on his head too, guitar in hand, holding it with aura while his fingers continued playing. The rhythm he played surged in intensity, taking over the melody as his legs kicked and swung wildly in the air. And then pumped the show up. He floated, all while still spinning, his guitar riffs blazed through the song, momentarily drowning out the clones, who slowed to let the main act take the spotlight. The crowd froze. Their frenzy died mid-jump, the sheer awe enough to bring everything to a still. And there was more. As the song approached its climax and Taka landed back on the stage, every Rockinessus lifted a single finger. And then, a barrage of lights blasted into the sky, rapid and relentless, like Gatling guns firing fireworks that never exploded. The audience's eyes sparkled. The emotional ones were already foaming at the mouth. Even the heroes who'd been trying to shut everything down earlier could only stare, entranced by the spectacle. Taka's eyes gleamed beneath the mask, an excited smirk tugging at his lips. This was it. This was what he'd spent months preparing for. This was the culmination of all his efforts. The proof of what he could create with his own hands, with his own mind. The waves of aura notifications ringing in his ears were ignored entirely. All he cared about was the stunned faces before him and the sound of his own song filling the night. The heat, the sweat, the deafening volume, any other day, it would have driven him insane. But tonight, every sensation fueled him, sharpened him, pushed his performance further. Tonight, he wasn't the Taka he was every day. Tonight, he was at the peak, even if it was temporary, even if it was only in his own head. Tonight, he shone brighter than anyone. Ha, Taka laughed, eyes gaining a glow. Another system alert rang in his ears, but once again, it was tuned out. Taka's smirk behind the mask widened into a full and toothy smile. Once again, he rose into the air, floating higher and higher, the guitar cable stretching taut behind him as the speakers followed. Soon, the song reached its final stretch, and with it came the climax, an overwhelming surge that sent the crowd into emotions most had never even grazed before. Inspiration, excitement, raw motivation. Their throats tightened, their bodies trembled, their hearts thundered in sync with Taka's. For a moment, every single person in the venue felt it. No, they saw it. His presence, his existence, his very essence blazed brighter than anything they'd witnessed. Like a new star had erupted across the night sky, drowning out the rest. They felt it ripple through them, every cell shivering as if awakened. His aura. As the climax faded, Taka slowly drifted back toward the stage. The blinding light around him receded, and the crowd's emotions began stabilizing, though not fading. Eventually, the frantic beat slowed, and the melody softened. And finally, with a last resonant chord, the song ended, leaving behind a satisfying, almost cruelly tempting sense of wanting more. A full minute of absolute silence fell over the entire festival. Not a whisper or a breath from the public. Instead, everyone just stared ahead with blank gazes. For an instant, Taka's smile wavered behind his mask. But that had simply been the crowd snapping back from the trance. Once they all returned to reality. Clap. One single applaud broke the silence. And then another. And another. Until the entire venue erupted into applause, not a single person stayed still. Even the heroes, who'd been scrambling to stop him minutes earlier, couldn't help but clap. Taka let out a long, satisfied sigh, sweat rolling down his face beneath the heat of the lights and the stuffiness of the mask and hoodie. He snorted lightly, closing his eyes as he soaked in the crowd's frenzy and awe. His heartbeat and the intense state he had been in earlier cooled down as the crowd's cheering reached his ears. His clones did another batch of ridiculous poses behind him, but he didn't care. All that entered his mind at that moment was the people's acclaim. At least, until the blaring wail of police sirens cut straight through the cheers. His eyes snapped open, and his until then relaxed face turned to a deadpan in one go. Ah, shit. Immediately, he snapped his fingers, and every clone on stage puffed out of existence at once. A single wave of his hand disconnected all the instruments from whatever setup he jury-rigged. And then, after a short bow to the audience, bam! Taka shot into the sky, soaring upward as every piece of equipment trailed behind him like a floating tail of metal. Comma. Degree. Taka's paw, minutes later, through the sky. Comma. It's finally done. 3 whole months of work finally paid off. Phew, I exhaled, trying to calm my still beating like crazy heart. That had been amazing. Even now I felt elevated. Like I'd ascended or something. Maybe I'd fall back to mediocrity once I collapsed on my bed tonight, but for now, I felt like the whole world was in the palm of my hand. Instantly, my mind went back to the concert. Would I ever feel like that again? That sensation of standing at the top. My fist clenched, a small mocking smirk tugging at my lips. What the hell, I'm acting like an overly excited kid. I shook my head. Whatever that was down there, it had shaken me more than necessary. For now, I should focus on outrunning the police. Less than reminder that you have unchecked gains. Greater than. Right, I forgot you existed for a second. It was partially the system's mission that pushed me into doing all this, wasn't it? Crazy how I completely forgot. Well, whatever. Hit me with it, I said, waving a hand beckoningly. And hit me it did. Complete. You've taken a step forward in your path to true aura farming, for the true aura farmer does not steal. The aura farmer creates, shows, and inspires. Conditions for completion. Filled right pointing small triangle develop your own song. Check mark. Filled right pointing small triangle once done, present it in a place with more than 1,000 people. Check mark. Filled right pointing small triangle have people enjoy your song. Check mark. Less than calculating reward, greater than. Less than plus 1,000 aura. Greater than. Less than plus skill, imaginary technique, my theme. Greater than. That's a lot of aura, I muttered, eyes sparkling at the reward. Naturally, I opened my status to see how ridiculous my numbers had become. Status page. Filled right pointing small triangle strength, 119. Filled right pointing small triangle defense, 238. Filled right pointing small triangle aura projection, 6062. Total aura, 9052. Skills. Filled right pointing small triangle clean. Filled right pointing small triangle trouble radar. Filled right pointing small triangle connoisseur. Filled right pointing small triangle pain is just a feeling. Filled right pointing small triangle inimmovable object. Filled right pointing small triangle true speaking. Filled right pointing small triangle true breathing. Filled right pointing small triangle true walking. Filled right pointing small triangle good job beating me, but that was merely a clone. Filled right pointing small triangle efficient body. Filled right pointing small triangle aura projection pew pew mode. Filled right pointing small triangle imaginary technique, my theme. Filled right pointing small triangle sperm eye. Whoa, what the hell? I gawked at the number. It was over 9,000. How the heck had that even happened? My AP had barely been in the 6,000s this morning. It jumped by 3,000 in a single night, that's crazy. 1,000 was from the mission, so the other 2,000 must have come from the audience. Haha, I let out a wry laugh. This was beyond anything I expected. My prediction of hitting 10,000 by the time UA started suddenly felt way too conservative. 3 months remained. With stats like these now, who knows how broken I'll be then. Less than new skill unlocked. Greater than. Yeah, I know, my theme, skill, right. Less than no, another one. Greater than. Just now. Less than no, it happened during the show. You were simply too caught up into notice. Greater than. Oh, so what is it? Less than showing, greater than. Sperm eye, active. Description. The eyes are the window of the soul, and they too can reflect the sheer aura you exude. You just gotta make them glow a little. 'Cause glowing eyes means you're locking in. Filled right pointing small triangle you can change your eye color to your choice. Filled right pointing small triangle you can make your eyes glow. Filled right pointing small triangle you can add a small non-burning flame to your eyes to give yourself that classic sperm eye. Huh, well, I guess it makes sense something like this would show up, I muttered, looking the skill up and down, before deadpanning a bit. But did that have to be its name? Couldn't you just have called it the edgy eyes or something? Less than number. Greater than. Whatever. You do you, buddy. Still, as amusing a skill as it wasn't the one I was looking forward to at the moment. So, having given it a look over one final time, I closed the notification and opened my newly gained skill, eager to see what it could do. Imaginary technique. My theme, active. Description. Everything seems lost. The heroes are beaten, the world is a disaster, and only doom stains the horizon. Now, the weak simply stand powerless for a fate they are unable to change. Evil has triumphed, there is no hope left. Or so they thought. As the survivors cry in defeat, something sharp cuts through their despair. A melody. One they all know too well. Heads rise, and tears of hope fall. And all eyes are centered on one point. There he is, bathed in the sunset, accompanied by a song engraved in the world's memory. The Aura Farmer. Filled right pointing small triangle play a song of your choice in the minds of the people around you whenever you desire. Filled right pointing small triangle the song chosen won't manifest as a literal song playing in their heads like a speaker had been put in their brain. Instead, it will be created by the unconscious of the person, making them imagine said song, even if it's not actually playing. Pretty much like schizophrenia, but cooler. Filled right pointing small triangle you too can hear the song if you desire. Comma. Zam. Yeah, that's. Ahem. It's not like I'm already dying to try it out or anything. Sighing, I closed the screen and focused back on flying, though I kept glancing at the empty space where the window had been more times than I want to admit. Well, that's gonna be one hella fun skill to use in the future, I muttered and smirked faintly. But then, my phone buzzed. I raised an eyebrow and took it out. Someone had sent a message. Had Seiji seen the stuff I was up to and finally decided to hold me accountable for my actions? Curious, I opened the app. And my eyebrow twitched upon what I saw. Jiro. Yo Takahashi, guess what? I was at this music festival in Tokyo, and suddenly Rockinessus popped up. Can you believe it? Image of Jiro making a peace sign with the Rockinessus gang in the background, rocking hella hard. I massaged my face in something akin to confusion or frustration, I don't know. Of course she was there. Then, sighing, I tapped a response. You. Stop fangirling. Jiro. Comma. To be continued. Well, and that was the song chapter. From here on, just a few more preparations are in order before Taka finally makes his debut at the UA. There's still one skill I want him to acquire. I'm sure you guys will like it. It's very, to make you take a seat from the I don't know how to describe it. But it's for sure a skill an Aura farmer should have. So look forward to it. To be continued.